Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning indeed. My name is Kenroy Batiste, and I will be your host today. I would first, of course, like to present this briefing relative to safety protocols for this event. So we want you to take note. Please take a moment to note our emergency procedures. In any emergency, stay calm, remain alert, and follow the instructions of security and the functions team. Report any emergency immediately. If evacuation is required, the conference will stop and you will be directed to the nearest safe exit. Please proceed calmly to the designated assembly point, which is the hotel car park outside the large conference exit. Now we want you to note this very carefully. Do not re-enter until authorized personnel confirm it is safe to do so. For a medical emergency, contact security or first aid immediately. Provide the exact location and do not move the affected person unless there is immediate danger. In the event of a fire or smoke, evacuate immediately using the nearest safe exit. Do not attempt to fight a fire unless you are trained and authorized. For a power failure, severe weather, or any other threat, remain calm and follow instructions. Move away from windows or unsafe areas when directed, and rely only on confirmed information from security or the functions team. For assistance, contact security 418-9761, 418-9761. Functions 438-7700, 438-7700. Or emergency services 911, 911. Remember, safety first, stay calm, follow instructions, report emergencies immediately. Security and function staff will identify and keep emergency exits and aisles clear throughout the conference. Confirm the designated assembly point before the event begins. Assist delegates who require additional support during an evacuation. Direct delegates calmly and efficiently. Prevent crowding and maintain clear access to emergency exits. And coordinate with emergency responders as required. We also want you to pay attention to the following. To our in-person participants, please have your cell phones on silent mode. To our remote participants, your microphone and camera are muted by default. These will only be activated if you are invited to speak. We ask that the conversations, comments, and questions posed be professional, on topic, and adhere to CTU's Code of Conduct for events and meetings. Thank you in advance for following these rules. Should you experience difficulties, please email us at events@ctu.int for assistance. Also, please note that the agenda for the week of activities, the presentations, and the bios of speakers during the CIGF and CYIGF can be found on the CTU's website, ctu.int. So I know it's been a long pants, as we say in Grenada, but of course, these safety protocols are very important for all of us. Once again, hello everybody, welcome to Grenada. So ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and esteemed participants, a very warm welcome to Grenada, the Spice Isle, and to the kickoff of the 22nd Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, CIGF, and the 5th Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, a transformative journey into the world of digital cooperation and development. I am very thrilled to be your host today for this remarkable event, and together we are about to embark on a day packed with insights, discussions, and innovations. Let's dive right in. Day one, ladies and gentlemen, is packed with dynamic discussions, emerging conversations, engaging speakers who are at the forefront of shaping the digital landscape. Today's agenda and bios of all speakers, like I mentioned, can be found, take note of that, in the event you want to get some more information about their presentations and themselves on the CTU website, ctu.int. We begin with an invigorating welcome by the esteemed Mr. Trevor Taylor, Secretary General of CTU, setting the tone for the exciting discussions ahead. There he is, ladies and gents. Please welcome Mr. Trevor Taylor. Mr. Rodney Taylor. I've christened you, sir, for the Grenadian style. Mr. Rodney Taylor, good to see you, sir. Welcome to the Spice of the Caribbean.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Trevor is not even the middle name, but I will take it. It is a real pleasure. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here in Grenada. I always say that this is where I spent my honeymoon 30 years ago at the Rex Hotel, which is now Royalton or something. Yeah. Always good. I love Grenada. I love the Caribbean, of course. I'm from Barbados. You may be able to tell from the accent or not. I live in Trinidad, so sometimes you may hear a little Trini accent as well. But welcome. Thanks for joining us in the room. For those online joining us, and welcome to the 22nd Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. And before I begin, I'm going to just warm up the brains a little bit. You know, there's some influencers in the Caribbean. I understand we have one influencer here, Pineapple Marketing, right? And I know just a few months ago, iShowSpeed took the Caribbean by storm, right? Grenada, he was here in Grenada, he was in Trinidad, and thousands of people came out. So there's an influencer in Trinidad as well. He's called Autonomy, and he does a show, What You Know, right? Anybody follows that? What you know? What you know? Used to be Daniel Loveless, and he's now Adonai Adio. So he asks a few simple questions. So we're at the 22nd Internet Governance Forum, and the CTU's website is www.ctu.int. So let me tell you who cannot answer these questions. NTRC cannot answer these questions. CTU cannot answer these questions. Everybody else is free to chime in. What does the WWW stand for? World Wide Web. Okay, good. We have the right people in the room. HTTP. Okay. When we add the S to it, what does that mean? Okay. All right. GTLD. Difficult one. GTLD. Any takers? No? All right, I throw it to NTRC. NTRC. Generic top-level domain. And what is Grenada's GTLD? .gd. Okay, good. We're warming up. CCTLD? Sorry, actually, so really it was CCTLD for Grenada. What does CCTLD stand for? Country code. CC country code, top-level domain. Good. What about ASN? Bevil can't answer this one. He's with ARIN. Do you know what ARIN stands for? Let's deal with ASN first. I met some young people this morning from I don't remember the name of the school, forgive me. ASN, take a wild guess. Or I'll throw it to ARIN. Tell me what. Autonomous system number, correct. All right, this one, everybody knows this one. ISP, Internet Service Provider. What is IXP? No. Sorry. No, you can't answer. Sorry, what is it? Yes, and you have one of the most successful IXPs here in Grenada, actually. And you'll be hearing more about that a little later. So thank you very much. That is the spirit that we need this week. We want it to be interactive. We want you to learn, but we also want to learn from you. So this week is not about complaining about Digicel and Flow and how slow the internet is and how much you pay for it. No, that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about internet governance issues. And so this little exercise is really about how we understand shared terms and shared infrastructure, how decisions are made about how the internet is developed, the technical standards, the policy implications for things like cybersecurity, child online protection, all of those issues. And now, of course, the big topic, the hot topic, artificial intelligence and its implications for the internet. So it is deliberately multi-stakeholder in nature. And by that we mean there's everyone in the room. So we have governments here, we have the private sector here, we have network operators here, we have civil society, we have young people from a wide cross-section, because the internet itself is pretty open, okay? And there's no single organization that runs the internet. And therefore, when we talk about how the internet impacts society, we need all voices at the table. And the region has been shaping these rules much longer than many, actually. We are celebrating 22 years of internet governance here in the region. This actually predates the United Nations Global Internet Governance Forum. And so that's why we are at 22, where the UN is at 21. And I think, based on the long-standing nature of the CIGF, I think it is time, Nigel, that we had the CIGF in the Internet Hall of Fame. Are you aware that there is an Internet Hall of Fame? Anybody knows this? There is an Internet Hall of Fame. There's actually a Barbadian guy who's in the Internet Hall of Fame. And do you know why he's in the Internet Hall of Fame? Anyone can answer this one. He developed the very first search engine before Google and before Archie, no, so actually Archie is the name, before Ask Jeeves and Yahoo and all of these things. I suppose most of you now use Google, maybe many of you use now ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all of these things, right? So he developed the first way to search the internet. So Archie actually was archive without the V. So this morning is a working session. The official opening is tomorrow, right? So hence we didn't do all the formalities and the protocols. We expect the minister to be here with us. Who knows, maybe even the prime minister might be able to visit. So we will move this morning really into a capacity building. We want it to be interactive, right? We'll focus on cybersecurity and critical infrastructure, followed this afternoon by the 5th Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, and the chair of the Caribbean ICT Youth Network should be in the room. Okay, he's doing something outside, but he'll be in charge of this afternoon session. I see many young people here already, and we anticipate that more will come. We want to thank all of our partners. We don't speak about sponsors in the IGF, we talk about partners, right? This is not a commercial event. And so we have ICANN. ICANN may be joining online. The rep from ICANN missed his flight. Sorry, he didn't miss his flight. Flight got canceled. Yeah, flight got canceled. He didn't miss his flight. Hello, Albert, if you're online joining us. Do you know what ICANN stands for? A very, very, very important organization when we talk about the internet. Anyone? Okay, well, literally anyone, so even Bevil, even Nigel. It's the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They manage the global DNS, right? Without them, there's no internet. ISOC also is a very, very important partner with us today. You know, ISOC represents Another very important organization is the Internet Society, and it's the home for the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. We also want to thank LACNIC. LACNIC is also a regional registry, and they manage the public resources for Latin America and the Caribbean. ARIN, the American Registry for Internet Numbers, we want to thank you for your continued support from day one. And the United Nations has its own IGF. This year they will be meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, and they also provide support for the CIGF over many, many years. Over the next 3 days, we'll cover cybersecurity and infrastructure resilience. We'll hear reports on national IGFs. So while this is a regional IGF, there are national IGFs as well. So Trinidad and Tobago has the first IGF, national IGF in the region. Barbados has had an IGF in the past. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has had a national IGF. And that is an opportunity to focus nationally on the internet issues that are infecting you. If you have children and they spend too much time on the phone watching Instagram and TikTok and so on, you feel they should be on this thing, that the content is not age appropriate. All of these things you can say, we can discuss. That is what this forum is about. Artificial intelligence. That is one of, as I mentioned, the hot topic. That is the topic right now. Billions and billions of dollars are being invested globally on AI. What is the implication for AI on internet, the future development of the internet? Many of you know are not even searching, you're using the AI tools. How many people use ChatGPT? Students, I hope you're not using it to write your assignments. What about Claude? Anyone using Claude? Microsoft Copilot, Grok? Okay, all right, good. So we got the right people here. So we'll be looking at AI. And all of these feeds directly into December when the Global IGF convenes in Nairobi, Kenya under the theme, Governing the Internet in the Age of Intelligence, with AI once again at the center of the world's agenda. I want to thank the government and people of Grenada for hosting us. Pulling off events like this is not cheap. We are at a very beautiful hotel here and a beautiful beach, one of the best in the world, right? You would agree to that? So, right, they helped us. Without their support, financial support, we would not, and also marketing and so on, we would not be able to pull this off. And all of the other partners that I mentioned, thank you. Thank you to CTU Secretariat for the work in promoting, organizing, and so on. To our participants online, we have probably as many people online. I'm not sure what the number is right now, but we have a substantial number of people online. We will be streaming the event. I want to thank Jolie McPhee, who is in charge of the streaming, to making sure that everything runs smoothly. This forum only works as a conversation, all right? We are not lecturing people this week. It's not a lecture, okay? We leave that for the classroom. This is about interaction. Please ask your questions. Push back if there's something that you disagree with, all right? If you think that AI should be banned in schools, you can say that. If you think that banning AI is foolish, you can say that, but in a nicer way, right? To be clear, we are not here to, I mentioned, we're not here to complain about flow in digital. The conversation is much broader than that. And what you raised this week shapes the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework going forward. We have developed over the years a policy framework to guide our governments and our stakeholders on how they deal with internet issues. And with that, let's get to work and welcome to the 22nd CIGF. Please have a good time.
General. Now, for an in-depth journey into the heart of internet governance with introduction to internet governance, what it means, why it matters, and how it applies to the Caribbean. My good friend Jervis, DaBreo. Whenever I see him, automatically I'm educated on internet things of the sort. Thank you for all that you do for Grenada and by extension the Sister Isles. Our experts at the moment are Mr. Nigel Cassimire, Deputy Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. There he is. And Mr. Bevil Wooden. He is the Director of Caribbean Affairs at the American Registry of Internet Names. Internet numbers. Oh, okay, I'll talk with my producer about that. Internet numbers, okay? There you go. So, take it over.
Yes, thank you very much, Glenroy. And everyone, as mentioned, I'm Nigel Cassimire from the CTU Secretariat based in Port of Spain. And I'll be talking to you about internet governance generally. As the SG mentioned, this is our 22nd Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, and what we do is we move the forum around to different islands and countries of the Caribbean on an annual basis, as we have it. So as we move around, we always, in fact, the purpose of moving it around is to engage a wider audience in the business of internet governance. Build the involvement of stakeholders from all stakeholder groups in internet governance. So we always encounter persons who might be fairly new to internet governance or the concept in general. So at the CIGF, we usually spend a little time to set expectations with respect to what it is internet governance is. Thank you. So we're wondering who runs this global internet. And as the SG mentioned, nobody really runs it, but think about all the people who are involved, you know? And in fact, we use the internet for a whole set of things every day without really thinking, how does this stuff all work, you know? Your messages move, you could make payments, you could have meetings online, we have people online and all sorts of stuff here. And it feels like this is just kind of magic in there, but there are a lot of systems working behind it at different levels to make the experience as seamless as it is for you. And we have all these various actors involved. We have ICANN and the technical bodies that basically run the technical infrastructure. We have national governments. I mean, the internet and its operations must function within national laws. It was mentioned that the United Nations also runs an internet governance forum, and our forum, in fact, stemmed from an initial meeting of the UN called the World Summit on the Information Society. That finished in 2005, and that's the same year we started our Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. We have the Digicels and Flows and so on, the ISPs, the technical infrastructure providers. We have technical persons. We have technological companies that create the technology. All of these contribute to the internet that we know today. But basically, I guess the question would be, who runs it, you know? And the short answer is, no one person really runs this thing. But for this globally complex system to work, it must mean that there is governance around it, all right? And if you think about all the levels in which this governance must exist, you have to set up a global technical infrastructure for communications. And that by itself is a big deal. You have to have cables, you have maybe satellites, you have local infrastructure within countries. You have, and then with that, what do you do with that? You run basic systems and applications on that. For the internet, we're talking about the internet protocol and all the technical operations associated with the internet. We're talking about domain names, associated with the internet. And all of these layers and aspects that I'm talking about involve multiple organizations. And we are really combining all of them, working together at the various levels. So we have thousands of independent actors, millions of daily decisions taking place in this functional global system. And in fact, when we began the Internet Governance Forum 22 years ago now, there was a working definition. And that working definition has basically stood up quite well. And it talks about Internet governance being the development and application by governments, private sector, and civil society in their respective roles, right? So development application by all these people in their respective roles of the shared rules, norms, and I forget the next word, that shape the evolution and growth of the internet. So that pretty much is what is involved in the overall governance. All these actors working together to make this whole thing work. And the governance, the scope of governance, therefore, is very wide. You're talking technical matters, you're talking social type matters, you're talking legal matters, because there is content on the internet that we have to make sure that we respect things like intellectual property rights and the like, right? And now we have artificial intelligence emerging, which introduces a whole new realm of possibilities and challenges that we have to consider what it does for internet governance. So just to give you a visual, you might be on your phone interacting with a certain app. Behind that, at a lower level, that app has certain protocols associated with it that would cause you to communicate effectively with a server or with another user on the internet, as the case might be. Right? So that's the technical layer protocols, and it travels over the physical infrastructure. So this is why we talk about connectivity. We need connectivity at various levels. Right? So your app interacting with a layer that relates to communications protocols running on a physical infrastructure. And if you could imagine multiple of these interconnected through the physical layers and communicating, what's the word I was looking for? Coherently, using particular protocols. That is how our internet essentially works. And as I mentioned, it's not simply one institution involved, it's multiple institutions working together at these various levels. So, what sort of things fall into the realm of internet governance as far as questions are concerned? Yes, the physical connectivity. And back when we started in 2005, that was, I would say, the main thrust. Putting infrastructure out there so that people can connect, people can be connected. To a certain extent, that is still important because there are people who still are not yet on the internet, and globally that's about 1/3 of persons now. In the Caribbean, I think we are better than that, but connective, and not only that, the type of connectivity required also evolves. Back in 2005, we would have been happy with, I don't know, maybe 1 megabit per second up and down, but now we're talking hundreds of megabits per second or even gigabits per second, right? So it's a kind of a moving target that we talk about. So the technical protocols, we've evolved the internet protocol and its associated protocols over the years to make them more powerful for the types of applications, the more powerful types of applications we're talking about. Security of all this network and the applications. That's another important aspect of the internet. And then at the social level, you're talking about things like privacy, data protection, and the like. Those are different layers of everything that relates to internet governance. So it's a broad field. It involves not just engineers. It involves, in fact, when I go to internet governance fora around the world, it tends to be engineers and lawyers. Lots of lawyers have gotten into this whole governance space. And as I mentioned, intellectual property type things, but rights, human rights, and so on the internet are part of a lot of the discussion as well. So multiple layers, multiple organizations, multiple stakeholders involved in this. So it's a distributed system requiring distributed authority. I mentioned in the working definition all these actors acting in their respective roles. And in their respective roles means that we need to have them contributing in their appropriate way, at the appropriate time, in the appropriate space. So we call that multi-stakeholder environments. Multi-stakeholder, everybody coming together from various walks of life, essentially on an equal basis. The governments, the private sector, the civil societies, the academia, the young people who have emerged as strong voices in more recent times as well. So multi-stakeholderism is the right problem. So if we have a human rights related issue that crops up on the internet, yes, we would want to hear from the experts in that area as to how we deal with it in this space. So I'll stop and invite my colleague, Mr. Bevil Wooding, to join me. I'll just say, at this point, the internet is global, but the consequences are intensely local. So it's here. People are using it for business, for education, for social interaction and the like. And you can see entrepreneurs coming up with ideas as to how to apply this technology for local benefit. We have to consider, okay, at the technical level, how do we route our traffic and communicate on this internet? What are the sort of platforms we want to have? We hear a lot about data centers these days, for example. The artificial intelligence is emerging. Apart from data centers, data management or data governance. We have to manage personal data, but we also have to accomplish these things in a way that keeps our nations sovereign. So if, for example, we are accustomed to running our applications locally, but we decide, okay, for efficiency, maybe we put it in the cloud and host it in some other country. We need to realize that we are now subject to the laws of that particular country, which might not have been the case before. So these are considerations that we have to take into account. And how do we keep the whole thing operating securely and effectively? So there are specific local impacts that we have to take into account. And this is the type of discussions that we'll be having over the next couple of days. The SG also mentioned this is an interactive forum, and in fact it is. Right? This is one forum where it works only based on the interactions we get back from you in the audience, here in person and online. We operate a hybrid environment, and we solicit the inputs from you, however you are interacting with us. So this is what we need to foster in this couple of days. The purpose would be to help us evolve that policy framework that the SG mentioned that we've developed over the years. And that is like an amalgamation of the views that have been gathered over the multiple years of the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. And so I'll stop at this point and invite my colleague, Mr. Bevil Wooding, to take us through the next part of the presentation related to understanding internet governance.
Thanks. Thank you, Nigel. And good morning, everyone. Morning. So this presentation has two parts. This is understanding internet governance. What is it? Why does it matter? Nigel dealt with the what is it component. The why does it matter is why we're all here today. And I wanted to get into my section by asking a simple question. Anybody knows how many people live within the Caribbean? Just estimate, not exact. And so, anybody wants to guess how many people are in this room? Estimate. Not 19 million, right? We could start with that. But around how many? About 100, thereabouts. And therein lies the challenge with internet governance. You have 19 million plus users of the internet in the Caribbean, and 100 or so persons, including those online. How do we effectively govern or bring to light the interests and the priorities that go into how we use the internet in the Caribbean? Now, expand that to a global stage, about how many people on the planet-ish? How many? About 8 billion. All right. So 8 billion on the planet. And the same thing happens, that is happening in this room, happens at the Internet Governance Forum globally. A fraction of persons sit in the collectively amongst the shape and contours and priorities of global internet governance. Now, when you put that into perspective, for the Caribbean, we are already living inside of the consequences of global internet governance decisions. People have made decisions about where undersea cables run, about how technology works, about how the AI that we're all now adopting functions at its core, independent of the voices in this room, largely, and independent of the concerns and priorities of our societies, largely. And so when we think about the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum in the context of global internet governance, this statement on this slide that Nigel left up is really key for us. The internet is global. Us, our families, and our communities. And so for those who come into the space and think or talk about internet governance issues, at the core, it's not simply what's happening in the globe, it's what do we want to see happening in the societies and communities nearest and dearest to us. So global decisions will eventually, inevitably arrive in local institutions and communities. Decisions about routing or architecture can affect resilience. It can affect creators, it can affect consumers. The internet now is very much a part of everything that we're doing. When this forum began 20-something years ago, it was still an emerging phenomenon. Now it is an inescapable and inevitable aspect of economic, social, political development and well-being. And that's why these conversations matter. So for the representative sample of the 19 million plus persons in the Caribbean, what we talk about really makes a huge difference to how the region continues to get the best of and to position itself appropriately as it relates to the internet. So I want to look at a couple things. We approach internet governance, we approach global governance from a position of contribution, not vulnerability. Nigel and Rodney Taylor both said that the Caribbean began its internet governance journey 1 year before the Global Internet Governance Forum was started, because we recognize a simple truth. The region has to take responsibility for how these things come into our societies and how we leverage them for the good and for the benefit of our communities. So there's this assumption that because the region is small or because it has resource constraints, that it should simply or will simply be a recipient of somebody else's views and priorities on how this thing should work out. And this forum that you are now a part of, that we will be spending a few days exploring all kinds of topics and issues, is part of our determination that we will not be passive onlookers of how this hits, how it shapes, and how it informs our societies. So the reality is this: the region has deep engineering expertise. We have a CTU, we have national telecommunications regulatory commissions across the English-speaking, the OECSA, Eastern Caribbean states, regional regulators looking at telecommunications, spectrum, satellites, bodies within the university system looking at artificial intelligence. All of this is our contribution to the internet governance in our space. And one of the things that is critical to that, several persons refer to the role of experts and expertise. But you know what creates the greatest expertise without certification? Actual users on the ground in everyday life using this thing to go about their business. And those voices too become a part of the chorus that shapes how we prioritize internet governance for the Caribbean. And so if you're in this room and you have a sense that, well, I want to hear what the experts have to say about the technology. Yes, we'll have experts speaking. But the thing that makes this room really valuable to all of us is every voice talking from your place of experiential expertise. You're a school teacher, you're seeing AI coming into the school, you have concerns about what it is doing to the children and their development. That's a voice that is necessary inside of this space. You're an entrepreneur, you're looking at the challenges in getting external payment providers to deal with your business, with your EC currency, your exotic currency. That voice is critical to how we carry messages to the global forum about taking care and concern for Caribbean entrepreneurs. You all with me? So the conversations aren't light talking shop type conversations. They are the topics that emerge in this space that go into the global forum and create a Caribbean presence and establish Caribbean priorities and determine Caribbean outcomes that are beneficial to us. And that's what the forum is about. You're a student trying to figure out what are these career choices that my father and grandfather spoke about in this age of digital technology and AI. And those questions drive decisions about how education evolves inside of the global internet governance debate. So every person has an expert view based on their life experience that can contribute to the shape and to the form and the prioritization of the Caribbean internet governance position. And that's key for us to understand. The choice that we have is really simple. The route A, passivity, somebody else will make this decision for us somewhere else, somehow. And route B, which is the one that we've chosen, and this is why we're here, participate purposefully in shaping the digital environment for our region and for the world. One of the things that we have already seen over the years with the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum is that the topics that we discuss are of relevance both to other small island or developing states elsewhere in the world, but also to emerging and developed markets trying to figure out how to deal with rural communities. And experience are relevant to them as well. And so our voices and our articulation of the concerns, the priorities, and the preferences actually shape how other regions developed and developing go about trying to find ways to address their own concerns. So that's the choice that we want to make inside of this. And this last one, before we close this session, would be the spectrum to see as we go throughout the week and forward with the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum generally. Moving from a region, moving from a nation, moving from special interest groups that are reacting to things, to adopting, to participating, to shaping. The Caribbean engagement will sometimes require us to respond to developments that are taking place outside of the region. And that's natural and to be expected. But in other cases, we have to adopt sound global standards and practices because we are participating in a global community and society and economy. That participation creates a presence for the region and access to the conversation. We have to show up in the spaces where the decisions are being made about how the internet evolves. Not all of us will be able to show up, but we can carry the voice forward by how loud we speak and how loud we contribute in this space. And those who get to go to Nairobi this year for the global IGF, or those who sit into forums like we discussed earlier, they would hear the concerns that we carry from this meeting and take them into those fora. But shaping the global internet experience and the global internet governance structure requires something more. Being present is not enough. Being consistently present and being substantive in how we bring viewpoints around our priorities is what really matters. And that's what we want inside of the discussions that we'll be having this week. We want to have enough substance to influence how problems are understood, and we want to have enough substance to shape how solutions are actually developed. You'll get the two-sided thing. How problems are understood is important, but so is how our solutions developed. It's one thing to say this is an issue, and we don't knock the ISPs for knocking them sick, without having, on the other hand, a solution to address what the current issue or problem is. And that's the kind of balanced discussion that you'll be seeing over the next few days. So the goal is not simply to be present, the goal is to represent. Represent the concerns of your particular stakeholder constituency. Students, entrepreneurs, business persons, regulators, governments, general members of society, all have a say in how this is going to be shaped. So I want to leave you with three questions that will shape the participation this week. And I want you to carry these questions into every session that we have over the next few days. How can I exercise influence? What does this thing that I'm hearing mean in my local context? If the internet is global but at the same time intensely local, there has to be a relevant application for wherever you function and whatever you do. And you have to find that inside of the discussions. And then third, how can I help? Make it personal. How can I help position the Caribbean to become the internet space that is safe for me and my interests, but also for me, my community, my family, and the generations to come? Everybody with me? That's what we want to do in the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. We want to make it real. We want to have discussions that teach us and train us and so on, but we also want to have discussions that shape the way forward for us all. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll just add one last thing, and as the slide is still up, the shaping part of it. So we're going from connectivity to capability, and our theme for this 22nd CIGF is exactly that, connectivity to capability, shaping a resilient, trusted, and innovative digital Caribbean. So we want to shape our development. And this is why we ask for your interaction so that we can get your views to take them into account as we consider the appropriate policy measures going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Cassimire, Deputy Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, and Mr. Bevil Woodin, Director, Caribbean Affairs at the American Registry of Internet Numbers. All right, we pause for a moment. It's time to get into capacity building session 1. Now, this is an extremely important session we're talking about because we are going to be focusing on cybersecurity for policymakers, from strategy to incident readiness. To speak to us on this very important topic, we have two speakers who are joining us remotely. So, of course, you will focus your attention on the screen. Mrs. Candy Saunders-Alfred from CARICOM Impacts, and Ms. Utica Alves from the CARICOM Secretariat.
We also have our Regional Intelligence Fusion Center, which is also located in Port of Spain, to which that center deals with intelligence gathering and sharing. And we also have the Joint Regional Communication Center, which is located in Barbados, that deals with passenger information, maritime, any type of information like that. You all could send requests and provide the information for you all. Just before I introduce the CCS CAP, I just wanted to highlight some of the threats within the region. Mr. Taylor spoke about AI. And this first paragraph that you're seeing there, where there are diverse cyber threats, everything now is integrated with AI. We cannot hide it. We cannot stop it. It's here. It's how do we deal with it. That is why conferences like this helps us to be able to understand what mechanism we need to put in place, or to even help upgrade that may assist us in helping to actually defend our country against these threats. So ransomware now, we are seeing a lot of these attacks now, they are AI generated. Phishing has become one of the top tier now, and the phishing has become much more sophisticated, and we know long time we could have identified. It's much more difficult now. And because of this, we are seeing a lot of data breaches from government institutions, finances, healthcare, and education sector. One of the things I don't have here, two things. Within the CARICOM region, we are now pushing for digital transformation. Grenada is one of the countries that are at the highlight, or who are the head of this digital transformation push. And one of the things that we recognize that within the region, we are now encouraging our persons, both local and internationally, to actually do digital forms for us to be able to enter countries. These forms now, there are a lot of illegal forms. So persons who are traveling, a lot of you probably travel and came to Grenada and you all had us to fill out a form. Just to highlight, none of the forms within the region you have to pay for. If you all came to Grenada and paid to actually do a form, then you all were definitely fished. We are seeing a lot of that happening. We are taking on these sites. We are communicating with our national points of contacts, but within taking it down, 24 hours, another site is up. So just to be mindful of that. And if the sites are very much, they look authentic. So just for you to be mindful, what these scammers do, they would actually take your information, go to the legitimate site, fill it out, and then provide the QR code for you. So just to be mindful of that. So we see that there are threats against critical national infrastructure. We do have challenges in cybersecurity. One, there's lack of persons, which we are now seeing where countries like Grenada are now pushing to have more persons in this field. The laws needs to be much more updated for us to be able to have that regional push, because each country is fragmented, and now we see there's a need for us to be able to kind of come together to get it streamlined, so that if something happens in Grenada, Barbados could actually get that person or get the information to be able to actually prosecute. All right, and there's a need for us to have more coordination efforts and planning. So this forum or this gathering is a pivotal one. So you just overview the CCS CAP, some of the goals, some of the initiative, and the roadmap and response. So the initial CCS CAP was actually formed or created as heads of government, so that cyber crime was a tier 1. And because of that, there was a 2016 document that was created, to which CTU played a pivotal part in formation of that document. And they saw that there was a need to address cybersecurity, cybercrime. So out of that, there were 5 action pillars. Coming out of that pillar in 2025, we actually launched an updated document. This is where all member states came together. We had consultations virtually, and then we had a launch in Trinidad and Tobago that highlights the new pillars, as you see, which is public awareness, education and advocacy, capability development and capacity building, enhancing and harmonizing technical standards and infrastructure, cyber incident management, which was recently added, policy and institutional framework, and regional and international cooperation. So this is just some of a breakdown of the actual plan and what each of the pillar would actually give member states. So one of the key things, as you see, this is the first pillar, which is key, which is public awareness, education, and advocacy. So this is where we actually try to push and provide training to member states. And currently we're in the process of trying to implement capacity building, tabletop exercise, and actually training in digital forensics, cryptocurrency, deep and dark web, so that our member states could be more aware. And also out of that, we are also pushing a lot of public campaigns for awareness. Pillar 2, which is capability development and capacity building. We want to be able to develop regional expertise. So instead of us having to reach out internationally, we have experts within the region. So why not try and utilize those persons? So out of that, we would actually try to build out a platform to allow CSIRTs, cybercrime units, public and private sector to be able to access persons with the competencies to be able to assist with cybercrime investigations. One of the key things we also want to promote is digital forensics, because identifying a crime and actually trying to gather the evidence properly to be able to put that person or that criminal before the court is key. So we need to be able to push member states to be able to have that capability to be able to go before a judge, jury, to be able to present evidence. Promote operational coordination through networks, improve coordination, and also to create that regional expertise group to which we'll have the aspect of legal, technical, and operational sectors to be able to support some of these initiatives. For 3, enhancing, harmonizing technical standards and infrastructure. We want to look at the cybersecurity aspect to have technical standards with ISOs, and also to have CII protections and framework. We're also looking at having frameworks as it relates to supply chain, because we see that aspect recently has even peaked as it relates to a lot of supply chain architectures being threatened. I spoke about the harmonizing of law, which is important within the region, and to provide SOPs as it relates to digital forensic labs, so that we'll keep the standard throughout the region. And of course, most important, to promote resource sharing. For Pillar 4, which is policy, institutional, regulatory framework, also to ensure that the legislation is harmonized, to ensure that these laws, privacy law, because we have to think about our customers, which is the public, to ensure that data protection laws are aligned with a lot of the standards that are out there internationally, right? Risk management frameworks, also looking at e-evidence and digital forensics legal framework, which is very important because, as I say, identifying a threat or a crime, how do we prosecute? What is the procedure? What are the frameworks in place for us to follow? The aspect of mutual legal assistance and extradition, as I said, Grenada is one of the countries within the region first that actually ascended to the Budapest Convention, which is we at CARICOM Impact are trying to push other member states to do same. This would allow ease of sharing information when it comes to a crime that is happening within the region. And of course, to ensure that each member state are able to update and develop themselves jointly, and also to provide review, which I will tell you about the governance structure shortly. Cyber incidents, we know this is important, so this was added to as one of the pillars as it relates to incident response for CSIRT. One of the things currently we're in process or in progress with, because of we had a steering committee meeting with member states and also with our partners, to which we recognize there's a need for a regional cyber fusion center, to which currently we have various subcommittees who are working on same, and we will be able to present that to member states very soon. We have an upcoming steering committee meeting, which is carded for October, the end of October, to which CTU is a pivotal member of that committee. So look out for that. We will provide the information to member states so that you all can know what's going on as it relates to the progress of the CCS CAP. Right, and one of the things we want to also promote is threat intelligence sharing, because there's a need to know that if something happens here in Trinidad, that Barbados would know, Guyana would know, so that threat intelligence sharing is key so that we could actually protect ourselves before any incident takes place. And the final pillar, which of course is pivotal, regional and international cooperation. We continue to collaborate with our partners, both regionally and internationally, because without assistance and communication with these partners, this process or this progress that we are making will not be possible. So, and also ensuring that there's that private-public sector collaboration is key, because as the weakest, we could only tell that, as you say, we are the weakest link. So ensuring that both public and private sectors are informed will better help us to be able to secure ourselves and by extension, the countries. So I spoke about the governance structure. It is currently in place. We have the subcommittees that were formed from the last meeting, which took place in March. So currently we're in the process of fleshing out the different operational arms of the CCS CAP. And in turn, as I said, we provide a report to our member states to let them know what is taking place with the CCS CAP. So last slide, second to last slide. So we want to encourage member states to thank you to, for supporting. Thank you for CTU for giving us the opportunity to be here, to be able to present on the CCS CAP. We will continue to be able to invest in our member states to provide training. We are available just to reach out for us, and we will provide the training and assistance. We will encourage the public-private partnership, and of course, most important, enhancing legal frameworks to ensure robust enforcement of cybersecurity measures. You all could scan the QR code. This would allow you to get the entire document, the CCS CAP document, so that you all can review. You will be hearing and seeing more of this, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity for being here to be able to present on this. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you very much, Mrs. Candy Saunders-Alfred from CARICOM Impacts. Now to a presentation by Ms. Utica Alves from the CARICOM Secretariat.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And I want to say a special thank you to Candy for covering all the big terms that I was going to use in my presentation. Thumbs up, Candy. I want to start up with a question. These phones that we have next to us, two challenges. My first challenge is, I know of the people in the room, the majority of you are on social media. So my question is your social media app tracking you? I'm asking it again. Do you know if your social media app is tracking you? That's the first question. A lot of us speculate and we go to our girlfriends and our colleagues and we say, are these apps listening to us? How come this thing knows that I wanted to buy this or I wanted to take a trip to Bora Bora? Are these apps tracking us? The second challenge, did you know that applications like Roblox that these children are using are now requiring age verification? So the way that they're doing the age verification is actually requesting that the children scan their faces. They submit IDs, either government issued IDs or passport. So my second challenge for you during the break, if you have to message them, if you have to call them at school, ask these children, are you scanning your face and sharing your government issued ID with applications? The reason I started out with that is because we always come with the what, and Candy did a pretty good job of speaking a lot on the incidents and all of the other technical terms. But the people part of it, are we sure what is happening in our pocket? When we put these phones into our pockets, Do we know what they're doing, what information they're collecting on us, and what they're doing with that information? So that should scare you. It's intended to scare you, but there's hope. In 2019, the Council for Trade and Economic Development on Information and Communication Technologies determined that a cyber resilience strategy for the Caribbean community was needed. The Secretariat mobilized resources, and through the United States Agency for International Development Digital Frontiers Project, the resources of a tune to $500,000 were mobilized, and the CARICOM Cyber Resilience Strategy 2030 project commenced. This project ran from December of 2023 until June of 2025. In the midst of that, multiple stakeholder consultations took place, including over 220 stakeholders from banks, civil societies, to member states, all of whom gave their input. What came out of this project was the strategy, firstly, 20 member state profiles that determine their cyber wellness, the gaps that they have existing in their cybersecurity posture. Additionally, legal and legislative gaps were identified. The good news is that in June of 2026, that strategy was approved, and I'm now able to present you with some of the information on it, not too much. So I wouldn't go into the big numbers because I'm sure a lot of you have seen the big headlines about this organization has been attacked and this data and all of these things. So the question we asked ourselves when determining cybersecurity or cyber resilience was, is cybersecurity enough? Is it enough for us to know who the bad actors are, to track them, to keep ourselves from being caught up in the humdrum of it all? We determined that cybersecurity alone isn't enough. The reason for that is the question isn't, will I be attacked? Will my organization be breached? Will my data be breached? It's when, because all of the data is pointing to the fact that the bad actors are using our member states, are using the Caribbean as a punching ground. They're testing new activities. They're using artificial intelligence. They're using everything against us while we're trying our best to patch those systems and monitor and do everything. So cyber resilience instead determines that we have to proactively manage the risk. We have to ensure that we're able to come back up in a sufficient time. We're able to manage our disaster, manage the resources, ensure that even if we are attacked and when we are attacked, our systems don't stay down and the data of our citizens doesn't end up on the dark web or somewhere else. So that is the what of the cyber resilience. The strategy itself brought about 6 key pillars, and you might notice some synergies from what Candy spoke to, because interestingly enough, the CCS was a part of how these pillars were formed and determined each one of them. So the first pillar that I'll dive into is mature governance across the region. Governance is something that we probably hear in almost all of these forums. We cannot get enough of it. And the reason for that is we need it. We need to know what resources we have, where are they situated, how do we organize them? Because we recognize as a region, we're a small block compared to the other countries. We need to group our resources and actually coordinate how our national cyber offices interact, how they share information, how they respond to threats. And that is one of the main reasons. Governance is the main pillar. On pillar 2, building capacity through human capacity management. Of course, if we want our member states and our citizens, civil society to respond to cyber threats, we need to build their capacity. And that's why I'm here this morning. Hello. We need to be able to share with them, as I'm doing with you now. This is what's happening. You may not realize it in the moment, but these apps are tracking you. You may need to take more courses, providing those resources to them, pointing them to the places that they have to go to actually gather that information and putting in front of them what those threats look like. Key actions for that are a regional cyber skills framework, so that regionally we can determine what skills are there, what exists out there, what universities have to offer. Do we need to build more capacity in those areas? Is this something that we have to go abroad to study, or do we already have those resources there? In terms of Pillar 3, increasing public awareness and cyber literacy, I believe that this in particular needs to start from as tiny as possible. I mean, even in the womb, we might need to pull out some cyber books and read to the baby, because we're pushing devices in their faces from the first moment they're out there. And you're saying, hey, let me take your photo and share it with grandma, and then grandma's sharing it in the group chat. And before you know it, their photo is everywhere and they did not consent to that. So cybersecurity in the school curriculum, determining that as young as 3 years old, children understand what consent is, what it means to share your information, share your data, and why that can be dangerous, why it can affect you. Defending critical infrastructure and information. Now, this is a big deal, because I'm certain at least one of you in the room can think back at a moment where you went to go visit a government website or another resource that you needed and you didn't have access to it. And it gave you some strange message like, we'll be right back, or this site has been down. I'm here to tell you a secret. They probably got hacked, unfortunately. So this is a possibility, as I indicated before. Harmonizing the definitions of risk and determining how do we continuously monitor and protect our data are key components of defending the critical infrastructure and information. For pillars 5 and 6, which are the last two pillars, bear with me. Regional laws and regulations with cooperation and reciprocity. The legal analysis determined that even where member states do have cybercrime laws or computer misuse laws, they are outdated, or sometimes they're tied to their constitution, and their constitution is so far flung back. Sometimes it's 1970 and we're now in 2026. So the things that the constitution may be speaking about didn't exist at the time. So building that capacity, determining that the laws that are out there may need to be bolstered. We may need to actually put new laws in place when we're confronted with things like AI that we couldn't have foreseen years ago and other emerging technologies. So standardize the offenses and the penalties. I'm certain that now AI is out there and you're going to hear about that a lot more tomorrow. You have seen everybody is nicing up the picture, as they would say. You put it in the thing and then you're like, yes, I want you to add a shoe here and make it red. And that's fantastic and it's wonderful. But what happens when someone takes that photo and distributes it or changes it in a way that you don't want to? That's why the investigation and the prosecution of those crimes is important, because it isn't always harmless fun. And oftentimes the people that it affects are the vulnerable communities and children even. Finally, regional information sharing and response. Now, I know Mr. Wooden would have mentioned a couple things that I'm so happy that he said, and I'm hoping other presenters drum on about it. As a region, we do not like to share information. No, we don't. I'm not sure why. I have a suspicion why, but I wouldn't touch on that. So sharing that information and incident response, a lot of the times organizations feel as if, oh, I've been hit by a cyber attack. I have done so badly, I deserve to get put in timeout. But sharing that information actually tells other member states and other organizations, this is what's out there. This is how bad actors, hackers are coming now. They're using romance scams. They're using all of these different tactics that we didn't know before. And hey, this is how I stopped it. Let's share information. Let's see what you did last month that actually kept you from getting attacked while I got attacked. So sharing that information can come in the form of a regional information sharing and analysis center, where we have a group of people that are specific.
Thank you very much. Ms. Utica Alves from the CARICOM Secretariat. She was disconnected. So the presentation is incomplete. And this has been quite a lot of insightful information on cybersecurity. Would you not agree so far? A lot of information for us to churn and make sense of. So we'll pause briefly, possibly a continuation. Otherwise, we'll move on according to instructions. Yes, so there's some connectivity issues, I understand, on her end, regrettably. But no doubt, we've been getting so much. And much more, that's the thing. Over the next 3 days, ladies and gents, you will get a lot of information, practical insights, and you will leave here better as professionals, and you will, of course, contribute to your own nation building in your various places of work, etc. Right, so we're going to move on to another presentation. This person is also virtually, okay? Mr. Albert Daniels, he will present on DNS abuse. Oh Lord, talk about that one. We know that, right? A lot of DNS abuse. So Mr. Daniels is going to present on that topic for us. He's going to talk about what it is and what policy interventions can be considered to protect against it. Please focus your attention on screen.
Are you seeing my slides, Nigel?
It's coming up.
It's coming up. Okay, I'm just trying to sort myself out.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Oh, I think your other speaker is ready to continue, maybe?
Sorry for cutting into your presentation, Mr. Daniels.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can go ahead because you weren't complete.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say that they heard me speaking against them and they made sure that I couldn't continue my presentation. Not to worry, I just have 2 more slides and then I'm done. The composition of the steering committee is a critical success factor for us moving forward with the implementation of the strategy, because the people in that room are the ones that are going to help to push that work forward. However, they can't do that alone. Member states, organizations, and other technical persons, you in the room, are needed to ensure that the strategy reaches to the ears that it needs to go, that you advocate for what is necessary for the stopping of the apps of tracking you and getting the information that is needed in front of you. So ministers determined that by the 15th of November, the action plan for the strategy should be updated. And the steering committee has now been mandated to stay on until December 2027. The CCS cap, as I indicated, being a key part of what the strategy looks like in the end, is also one of the mandates that the ministers would have put forward, that the CARICOM impacts and the CARICOM Secretariat work together along with the steering committee to ensure that the action plan that is put forward to ministers in November of 2026 actually pulls together the 2 bodies of work and brings the region together as one harmonized block for information sharing. So finally, we know that we're asking for one action plan for member states to nominate focal points and determine who will actually be a part of that work that will lead into the larger work in 2027. National consultations are intended for the end of this year, as well as 2027, to sensitize the public and actually bring about workshops and sharing information with them on what the strategy is and giving a lot more in-depth than this 10-minute presentation that I was able to do. The Secretariat and CARICOM impacts have also been mandated to continue resource mobilization so that we can fund the strategy and the other actions that are needed to bring it to bear. So finally, I'll ask, are you sufficiently scared? Do you believe that you need to do more in terms of your own personal safety and your child's online safety if you do have children? I'll leave you with that, and I hope when you're having your munchies and sitting together in the break, you'll have that discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alves. Now let's return to the presentation from Mr. Albert Daniels to speak on DNS abuse, what it is, and what policy interventions can be considered against it.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies for being on beyond control. Hopefully, I can get there sometime this evening so I can share face-to-face with participants. Nigel put up a slide at the beginning, which I wanted to refer to. But before I refer to that slide, I just wanted to say in the screenshots that I've been seeing of the participants, I saw one or two persons who I recognize, but more importantly, I was very happy to see new faces, new stakeholders, new persons who are interested in internet governance. And this is very important that we expand and spread the message of participation in internet governance to our colleagues, our peers, our friends, because we all need, as Bevil said, to participate in what's going on. Because yes, the internet is sort of governed internationally, and we know that it's national, but it's really personal in the final analysis. I mean, our online financial transactions can be affected. The security of our health data can be compromised. The security of our business data can be compromised. So we all need to play a role in influencing the policy development outcomes as it relates to all aspects of internet governance. So at the beginning, Nigel put up a slide that said, who runs the internet? And there was a section that said, ICANN and the technical bodies are one of the entities who contribute to running the internet. And it's very important that we understand what ICANN is. When we look at the screen right now, we see an ICANN ecosystem, which is composed of three important parts. And as I say very often, the most important entity in the ICANN ecosystem is the multi-stakeholder community. That circle in yellow at the top. Representatives of academia, of business, of governments, of end users, of the technical community, all of those stakeholders who are impacted by what happens with internet policy. So that is one element of the ICANN ecosystem. And another element is the ICANN board, the final decision-making body. The community actually develops policies and proposes policies to the ICANN board. And then the ICANN board makes a final decision on those policies. And once that final decision is made, then the ICANN organization jumps in and implements that final decision. So really and truly, ICANN is not just the organization that I work for, but ICANN is all of us. And most importantly, you sitting in the room right now and you who are online. So when we use the term ICANN, I want us to understand it from that perspective, so we realize that we have a very important role to play when it comes to actually influencing policy outcomes with regard to the internet that we use every day. Now, when I was looking around the room, I also noticed that most of you during the quiet time had your heads bent down looking at something in your hands with your fingers going. So we all use internet devices, and a lot of information goes across the internet when we use these devices. And each of these devices has a unique ID, a unique number, an IP address, 192.0.2.225 in this example, which is the sender's address, and another address, 2.203.0.113.0, which is the receiver's address. So for all of this communication to take place on the internet, all of these devices have these unique numbers. The issue is, though, that as human beings, it's not that easy to remember everybody's number. If every time I wanted to go to my bank's website, I had to remember one of these numbers, it would be impossible. I wouldn't do any online banking. So a system called the DNS, the domain name system, was developed, which allows us to use names that we can remember, for example, bankofgrenada.com. And those names are translated into the IP addresses. So you type in bankofgrenada.com and then or .gd, and the DNS would translate that domain name into the actual IP address. So without the DNS, we would not have a global interoperable internet. The DNS is at the foundation of every single thing we do on the internet. Every business email, every website that we go to, every social media communication, none of that happens without the DNS. So it makes sense then for hackers to execute attacks on this foundational component of the internet. And this is why we need to pay attention to what is happening with DNS abuse. So now, what is DNS abuse? Establishing consensus on what DNS abuse is very important, because ICANN has to reach a unified understanding of what DNS abuse is in order to be able to determine the boundaries of ICANN's involvement when it comes to mitigating against DNS abuse. So what was done is we are taking this gradient approach to defining what DNS abuse is, proposing a model which you are visualizing now on the screen, which has 3 concentric layers, and each layer represents progressively narrow definition of abuse, enabling a focused approach at tackling the issue. So if we look at the outer circle, the light blue one, the outermost circle encompasses instances where malicious entities are causing damage to others directly or indirectly. And this can include different types of fraud, such as phishing, scams, and other malicious activities. Addressing harm is crucial in safeguarding internet users and maintaining trust in online transactions. But just the having harm taking place is not necessarily DNS abuse. So we move a little bit inward in that model, and we look at the next concentric circle. We look at online harms, and nested within the outer layer of general harms, and these involve the use of internet infrastructure and content to inflict harm. Examples can range from online fraud schemes to severe offenses like child exploitation and cyber attacks. Now, ICANN's efforts in combating DNS abuse should also extend to addressing these online harms to ensure safer online environment. And then we go to the innermost circle of, and this is what DNS abuse actually is. It pertains specifically to malicious activities exploiting that DNS system that I've just described to you, exploiting that system that is used to translate domain names into IP addresses. And this includes malware, botnets, phishing, farming, spam, and these serve as delivery mechanisms for other forms of abuse. So within ICANN, our focus on DNS abuse is critical for maintaining the integrity and security of the DNS system, which is fundamental to the functioning of the internet. Now, the thing to understand about ICANN, the organization, is we neither regulate online content, nor do we have the capability to remove content. Our contracted parties, our registries and registrars, can only suspend domain names, removing a domain completely from the DNS. So what can happen with registries and registrars is they can take a website offline completely. Now, this is a very significant action, and it's not always the best solution and response in all instances. These limitations, however, do not prohibit ICANN from studying or aiding in the mitigation of DNS abuse. ICANN's bylaws make it clear that ICANN's role does not extend to regulation of online content, and ICANN does not have the ability to remove content, but we are able to assist in other areas, and these limitations do not prevent ICANN or the community from taking steps to better understand what DNS abuse is or implement measures that can aid in the prevention and disruption of DNS abuse. So DNS security threats include 5 broad categories, as you seeing on the screen right now: botnets, malware farming, phishing, and spam as it's used to propagate other DNS threats. And ICANN recognizes that this list is not exhaustive and will evolve over time. But this is the list that we use as a baseline for identification, for measurement, and for our mitigation activities. Now, when we speak about mitigation, by using these few examples, we can see who can intervene at what stages. For example, in what kind of situation would ICANN or its contracted parties get involved? In what kind of situation would law enforcement need to be the one involved? Or what kind of situation where your hosting provider or your domain name owners would have to be involved? And this understanding of who is to act is very important, because not every entity can do everything. And if we take the first example, for example, a call center social engineering attack, which is resulting in financial harm, this is an offline attack that extends beyond ICANN's purview and is best handled by local or regional law enforcement. If we look at the next example, consider a website like a news portal where the sports section has been hijacked to display violent extremist content. This is online harm at the content level. But again, this kind of issue is not an issue that may be dealt with from a DNS abuse ICANN perspective, and hosting providers or the domain name owners are the one who would actually be having to take actions in this situation. Now, looking at the third example, a domain name purporting to be a financial institution that is conducting phishing, and this falls under ICANN's definition of DNS abuse. In this case, the GTLD, Rodney mentioned that term, the generic top-level domain name registrar and registries, the ones who actually sold the domain names, have an obligation to act. These are ICANN's contracted parties, and the organizations selling domain names actually have contracts with ICANN, and this is where ICANN can actually enforce those contracts so that the registrars and the registries would be obligated to deal with the situation once it has been clearly identified and documented. And here are some other examples, but in the interest of time, I will not go through each one, but simply to say that we have to realize that we must have a very clear definition of what we are dealing with and a clear idea of which levels that ICANN and stakeholders can get involved in. So now we can look quickly at the 3 ways in which ICANN is assisting with DNS abuse. I first spoke about contractual enforcement, getting our registries and registrars to address DNS abuse, but ICANN also collects authentic data on what is taking place. Sometimes we speak vaguely about how many attacks are taking place, what kinds of attacks are taking place, but ICANN is in a position to provide some very expert fact-based data, which would allow us to take decisions based on what is actually happening. And not only that, but we also provide the community with tools that would allow them to take action. So I spoke about what we've been doing with enforcement. ICANN's contractual compliance has actively enforced the new DNS abuse mitigation requirements since we started off. And this started in 2024. And you see on this slide in investigations that have taken place, target registrar audits, and there has been a significant tangible impact in terms of the amount of domain names which have been mitigated with remediation plans completed by registrars and registries as a result of these different contractual obligations that ICANN has enforced with its entities. And then when it comes to the second pillar and area where ICANN can assist, we look at collecting data on DNS abuse. So ICANN supports technical programs that study and measure DNS abuse to strengthen the security and stability of the DNS. One of these programs is what we call Domain Metrica, which was launched in December 2024 for contracted parties, and in February 2025 for all of the ICANN community. And Domain Metrica serves as ICANN's platform to store, combine, and compare metadata on domain names. The system provides and includes a dynamic online dashboard and an API, an application programming interface that provides statistics, visualizations, and includes a search feature so you can find out which domains are being attacked, what sort of attacks are there, and what has been done to actually mitigate against those types of attacks. Another system that ICANN has put into place is Informal, the inferential analysis of maliciously registered domains. And some of the key findings of Informal are that cost automation and a lack of identity verification significantly increase the likelihood of abuse. So if as an organization, if as an entity, you are trying to understand what influences DNS abuse, Informal can give some idea of what's going on. So in contrast, proactive controls such as know your business customer requirements and restricted API access correlate to lower abuse rates. So when we know the customers that we are dealing with, the abuse tends to be less, and Informal goes into all of the details of that. And this one is interesting. Reactive measures such as domain takedown speed were found to have very limited deterrent effect. So this concept of taking down domain names as soon as we feel that they are involved in attacks have been shown by Informal not to have a very major deterrent effect. So then we come to our community tools. And ICANN has put in place many tools and many capacity development activities that would allow the community to be able to mitigate against DNS abuse. And there is also a dedicated webpage within the ICANN system, which was initiated in May 2020 and updated regularly to serve as a central resource for information on DNS abuse. So all of you in the audience right now and online can actually go to the main ICANN website, icann.org and /DNS abuse, and you would be able to get access to all of these tools that I have been speaking about. So the core issue then is, how does this affect our internet policy? We are asking you to participate in policy development and create an influence, create a positive outcome on policy as it relates to this aspect of cybersecurity. So what has happened is the broader ICANN community has called for stronger DNS abuse action. You, representatives of academia, business, governments, and so on, have called for stronger action. And what has happened within ICANN, for example, in a structure known as the Generic Name Support Organization, the GNSO, the call has been heeded by the broader community. And in August 2025, an issue report was published for public comment, much faster than the actual deadline that was set up. So public comment means that you as a community can take a look at this report and you can comment on it, say how you would like the policy development to change based on what you are facing in your country, based on what you are facing in your organization, based on what you are facing in your region. This is how you, as part of the community, can actually make an input into how the policy actually ends up being structured. The final issue report will include a draft policy development charter focusing on 2 issues that received expansive review in this activity that was taking place within the ICANN community. And also from a community perspective, the governments of the region actually give advice to the ICANN board on what policy should be and how they should be framed. And this is another area where you can influence your governmental advisory committee representative who sits within ICANN on what they should be saying within the ICANN community on what should be included in policies. So without going into all of the details, which can become a little bit complex, the whole point is that there is a need for very strong and impactful involvement by the community. So DNS abuse encompasses a wide range of problems, making it a multifaceted issue that requires a diverse approach to mitigation. So addressing DNS abuse effectively requires active participation of the entire community, all sectors, not just individual organizations, but everyone who can be impacted. And ICANN, as an organization, is taking significant steps to tackle DNS abuse, but we are just one part of the larger effort, and community involvement is absolutely needed. Various stakeholders within the ICANN community are working on different aspects of DNS abuse, reflecting a collaborative approach. But the idea is that you who are in the room, you who are online, need to have a better understanding of what is happening with regard to DNS abuse within ICANN, and also to play your part within the efforts to mitigate against DNS abuse. So I'm going to put my email address up on the screen right now, albert.daniels@icann.org. Like I said, hopefully I would make it to Grenada by this evening or tomorrow. And I would love to engage with you individually and follow up on some of the sprinkling of information that I've put out on DNS abuse, which affects all of us. And I should also mention, before I give the floor back to the moderator, that I would like to see more collaboration, not only with input from the community, but also with our organizations. I mean, I saw the slides from CARICOM Impacts and also from the CARICOM Secretariat, and I was looking to see where there was a note saying that they will be collaborating with ICANN, collaborating with ARIN, collaborating with LACNIC, collaborating with CARIBNOG, and hopefully we will see more of that moving forward. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you for paying attention, and I now hand back over to the moderator.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Albert Daniels from ICANN. Another round of applause for his presentation. Of course, I note he has made a call for greater collaboration. You know, there's immense power in collaboration. So let's all take That is an important point this morning. Right, so here's what we're going to do. It's time for a quick recharge. Coffee break. Yeah, have something to, of course, get your energy levels up. And we'll come back in 10 minutes. I know it's not too much of a time, but we'll be back in 10 minutes. If you're outside, I'm going to come and get you back in. So please, have some fun. Mingle while you're at it. And our journey continues. Up next to tell us about from connectivity to cyber resilience, Grenada's pathway to a secure, trusted, and resilient digital future, I invite forward Mr. Jervis DaBreo. Mr. DaBreo.
Thank you, Kenroy or Glenroy, because I heard Glenroy. So yeah, I'm not going to do any name callings because clearly we're getting the names wrong. Now, I'm not sure how many of you remember, but I remember as clear as day. There is this saying, when America sneezes, the world catches the flu. The problem, America was not sneezing. America had caught the flu. It was December of 2019. And before we blink, Grenada, we caught the flu as well. March of 2020, we went on lockdown. COVID-19, global pandemic. And movements that were very slow in coming had to be speeded up. We had to move faster. Why? Because the world was on lockdown. Education had to be reimagined. Work had to take on a new approach, work from home. And what we found is many of the digital initiatives that we were adopting slowly, we had to move a lot faster. We found ourselves in a space that we were not really prepared for. Parents became teachers. The network secured in the office. It moved to home, and the security was not there. And here in Grenada, we recognized that we had to do something about it. And so, in December of 2021, the idea behind setting up a national cybersecurity incident response team, that became a thing. In May of 2022, it was established. Now, cybercrimes did not start during the COVID-19 pandemic. But things got way, way worse during that period. Statistics from CARICOM Impacts says that we're looking at 100% increase in the number of attacks within our region. And so we realized that, hey, we have to do something about it. Of course, the connectivity is the easy part. So when you look at what has happened with CASIP, the CASIP network, with the mesh network funded by the USF Fund through the NTRC, putting internet connectivity in all schools, in public spaces, the community centers, that was the easy part. We connected people, but when it comes to security and resilience, there was a bit of an issue there. And so we realized we had to strengthen what we consider in cybersecurity to be the weakest link, the people. We had to ensure that their awareness got up to speed, that they knew what a good site looks like, what a malicious site looks like. And this morning we heard about HTTP and HTTPS. And then we realized that even though we told them HTTPS is secure, it may not necessarily be safe. And so here in Grenada, when we look at connectivity to cyber resilience, there are many things we are doing. There are three things I believe we have recognized. And yes, when you look at us on the map, we're a featherweight, just a little dot. But I think all of us in here who are familiar with what we're doing, you will know that we are punching well above our weight. We heard of the exploits of our own IXP being one of the best in the region, right, Brent? Right? We have our own data center For those of you who have not been to the Monjulu area in recent times, I invite you to take a drive through there. You would see some construction work going on close to NADMA, close to the data center. That is where our national SOC, Security Operations Center, and NOC, Network Operations Center, is being built. This is what we're doing to ensure that we improve our resilience and the security on this island. So what are the three things I believe we have recognized? One, security must keep pace with connectivity. We have connected people, and we have been working hard now on ensuring that the security aspect is dealt with as well. Within the last 4 years, we have trained scores of young people in cybersecurity. As part of the CARDIP project, there is also ongoing cybersecurity awareness training made available free of cost to Grenadians who would just sign up, take the courses, and complete them. So that is what we're doing on that front. Number two, we've recognized that national resilience is the sum of individual hygiene. At the end of the day, you can have the best firewalls. And those of you here who work on that level, you know what I'm talking about. Best firewalls, all the security procedures and policies may be in place. You can have the most sophisticated software protecting your endpoints. But at the end of the day, if the user, the people at the core of it, if they're still going to click on any and everything, if they're still going to open the attachments, if they're still going to try and get around the protection just so they can have access to Facebook during the workday, then we understand we have a serious problem. And so we recognize that. And while, yes, as part of connectivity, we have introduced many families who were unable to afford simple connectivity through the JUMP project, a collaboration between the government of Grenada and Flow. We've realized, hey, we can't just connect them and give them the devices. We have to ensure that they understand what online safety is as well. And number three, we recognize as well that we must move from reactive to being more resilient by design. We can't just be responding. We have to ensure that we put things in place to stop things from happening. And that is where some of what is going on right now, this is what it is about. Whether it's the Digital Transformation Agency, those of you who have been following the news, you'd realize we no longer have a Ministry of ICT. We have a Ministry of Digital Transformation. And the idea here is not just to be putting little plasters on different little problems as they show up, but to ensure that we can be an example to our neighbors, to let them know that we may be little, but we talawa, and we talawa bad. So these are some of the things that are happening. From the National Cybersecurity Incident Response Team, we have collaborated with many of the government ministries here in Grenada to deliver cyber awareness training. This year, for the very first time, we collaborated with the Ministry of Education as part of the Trust Now in Education to roll out devices, electronic textbooks and so forth. We decided to partner with them and engage all the grade 6 students as they get set to move into secondary school, have a conversation with them so they understand and have an appreciation as to what online safety, what it looks like, what responsible digital usage, what it looks like. And yes, we have had that conversation about Roblox and some of the dangers, and not just Roblox, you know, there are many of those platforms out there. But this is what we're doing here as we move from connectivity to resilience, ensuring that we cater for each link in the security chain, strengthen each of them with people at the core. I was given 20 minutes. I said I was going to take 10. I was told I can ask for 2 questions, only if they're easy questions. So check if your question is difficult, please hold it for when Bevil or one of them come up. If you have an easy question, you can ask it now, just 2. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you very much. Do you actually have any questions? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jervis DaBreo. Another round of applause for him. All right, so from Mr. DaBreo's presentation, we're going to move into capacity building session 2. And it's titled Critical Internet Infrastructure Lab, a non-technical overview of IPv6, RPKI, routing security, DNS resilience, IXP development, local caching, and network measurement to create better understanding and awareness. Now, time to meet the panelists. Mr. Bevil Wooden, of course, Caribbean Affairs at the American Registry of Internet Numbers, and of course, he's joined by Mr. Carlos Martinez, CTS LACNIC. Mr. Martinez is joining us remotely. They're next. And we have inclusion, Mr. Albert Daniels, he's joining the fray. Thank you, sir.
Right. Good morning again, everyone. This actually flows very nicely on the last presentation. We're going to be looking at the issue of critical internet infrastructure. I just need 1 minute to send the deck over to the team so that you can see it on the screen. And I shall do so now. And that should be that. And that should be that. All right, so one of the things about this subject, you heard the introduction there and it sounded all highly technical and yawn-inspiring. But that's not what we're going to, how we're going to be looking at this subject. Because remember, this is the Internet Governance Forum. So there is a forum for deep diving into the technical underpinnings of the internet and so on. My job today is actually easier. I want to look at critical internet infrastructure from the standpoint of what makes it critical and why does it matter. Right, so we can all participate in the discussion. And to the extent that my colleagues go into some of the more technical aspects of it, that will be by your encouragement and by your instruction. But what we wanted to really get a sense of is why are these types of issues, the hidden layer of the internet, even important for us to consider? And I like to use the analogy of a home building. I mean, most people, how many have ever had the good fortune / stressful fortune of having to construct a home? Anyone? All right. And how many of you who have undergone such a wonderful, life-changing experience spoke to the persons who you were dealing with about the beautiful foundation that you laid? Not many of us, right? That's what a discussion about critical internet infrastructure is like. If you're building a home, you tend to talk about the walls and the facade and the landscaping and the choice of fixtures and finishings and so on and so forth. But all of that is built on a foundation. And for any of us who spend any time whatsoever in church, you would know that there are houses built on sand and there are houses built on solid rock, right? And which kind of houses do we tend to want to have our homes built on? Those built on solid rock. That's what this presentation is about. It is looking at the thing under which all of our digital, economic, and development goals are actually being established and built. So let me get this presentation over to them. I'm getting some strange looks from the back. I see you, I hear you, and I respond now to you. All right, so send presentations at, yes? It's coming at you now. And so what I want to start with, do we have our 2 panelists online just to get confirmation, Albert Daniels and Carlos? Online? Great, fantastic. All right, so here comes the presentation. I delay no more. And I will begin without it. So that's going over. It's on its way to you. And I'm going to begin. I want to start with this. The title of the slide is the Hidden Foundation, Understanding Critical Internet Infrastructure Resilience and for the purpose of our discussion, and public consequence. Understanding critical internet infrastructure, so we will be discussing that, understanding the role that it plays in resilience and public consequence. I don't think we need to spend too much time on the rehearsing of the fact that the internet is now fundamental to all aspects of life and development, right? So the way in which it has woven itself into the fabric of society and economy is part of what makes this issue of the criticality of the infrastructure behind it important. So there's a relationship between the systems that we use and the services that we enjoy and the capability, the technical capability that delivers it to you. And we can think of it as if you had, and tell me when you get this slide up, you can think of it as a two-sided coin. On one side, there's the expectation, which is reasonable, that these services will be delivered to us and it will be reliable and we will enjoy it and it will be affordable and it will be accessible. These are expectations that many of us have come to have, whether we consciously think about it or not. And then there is this other thing called the reality, which is sometimes it's slow, oftentimes it could be expensive, sometimes it is inefficient, and sometimes it operates in ways that we don't always like for what we want to do. And when you have this dichotomy or this tension between what we want it to do because of how important it is to us and what it actually does, we become concerned not about who is behind it or what is the technical reason for it, and many of us would know this whether we're talking about cars or electricity at home or the internet. The issue is just fix it, somebody, just make it work, correct? The details of what it takes to fix it or just make it work, we expect that some group somewhere will take responsibility for that. And we further presume that that group knows what they're doing and why it must be done. Anybody ever had, like, you sit down in the evening when your internet sputters for a while and you say, you know, I am sure there's somebody, some young man or some young girl, somewhere fixing this thing, thinking about me and thinking about how much I wanted to just behave properly. Anybody ever had those musings? No, not really, right? Okay, so let me link that to this group that we're in here now. The extent to which those of us who have concerns about it just working say something to people who have the responsibility for it to work informs how diligently we go about the task of doing our jobs. You all understand what I just said there, right? You have persons literally in closets and rooms around the region responsible for making decisions about servers and networks and security, who have to have a sense that what they are doing matters. Sometimes they are professional enough or connected enough to know that what auntie said or wife said or children said or teacher said affects how they go about doing what they're doing. Other times they have to guess that the extra hours spent to secure a server or to configure a router or to address some issue actually makes a difference and somebody cares. I'm responsible for and have been a part of the Caribbean Network Operators Group. And I can tell you that there are some people who just let things break just to see if anybody cares. There's the Caribbean. We know ourselves, right? Just to see if anybody cares. Will anybody notice if I don't apply this security patch? Because you all haven't given me a raise in 3 years. And you know what? Let me see. I'm keeping it real for you, all right? So we're talking about critical internet infrastructure. I'm waiting for my slides to come up, and I'm trying to find ways to let you know why criticality matters. Because behind all of the internet systems are human beings. They're human beings. People who have tasks and jobs, and they want to know, just like you would for whatever is your task or job, that what they're doing matters. And part of our job or responsibility is to continue to interface with this group to let them know that the society that does not tell them please or thanks expects them to do their job and to do it well. So one of the key things in talking about critical internet infrastructure is to understand that criticality is defined by dependency. Let me say that again. Criticality is defined by dependency. A thing is critical if something of importance or consequence depends on it. So we can very easily say that having a properly functioning, running, operating, secure internet is critical because everything depends on it, right? From your banking transactions, there was an outage, I think a cable cut in one of the, just out of the territorial waters of one of the countries earlier this year, and the supermarket point of sale system went down, right? You don't connect servers and submarine cables with I'm trying to buy groceries, but there is a connection. There's a connection when the banking network goes down. Perfect. And so we want to get to this fundamental issue in defining this session and going through this discussion. If we think about how many of the things that we are interfacing with have at its core a connection to this thing called the internet, you will understand why we have something called critical internet infrastructure. Without the technical components that the members of the panel are going to speak about, you don't have your connectivity for your schools, buses, bridges, homes, water systems, sewage plants, etc. And that's why discussions around cybersecurity, if you make the connection and if you make it personal or even professional, you will at least have this thought running through your mind. I need to be concerned about the persons whose operations and activities are central to my being able to do my job or to fulfill my goal. And that really is where the internet governance community comes in. We may not have to know everything about what they're doing exactly, but what we do have to understand is, one, they're people, their roles matter, and the stewardship responsibility that they have over infrastructure that is essential to all of life as we know it now is a fundamental aspect of what secures and ensures the development trajectory at a national level and at a regional level. Everybody with me? I'm trying to make it not too heavy, but I also want you to understand it is heavy. It is heavy because our job is to keep that connection going. All right, so let's jump in. Dependencies create public consequences. The submarine cables, whether they cut, whether they remain, whether they're put in the right places, landing stations, power failures, all of the elements that can create disruption have public consequence. Understanding the dependencies allows policymakers, non-technical folk, regulators, politicians even, to see internet resilience as a matter of economic continuity. And that simple statement is important for us to realize for this one simple reason. It's not going to matter to those who have to make the policy or investment decisions if they can't translate it into terms that they understand. And sometimes one of the biggest challenges for technical communities is speaking the language of others. And that's why these multi-stakeholder groups matter. Because a network guy may or may not say something to the effect of, well, the IP router was broken and I saw 2 or 3 connections that need an upgrade and enhancement, but if we could just treat with the spectrum requirement for this thing, and the politician, the policymaker, or the business person will be like, just wake me up when you start talking English, please. Right? But for this to really involve and to span the range of groups that need to be a part of it, it has to be spoken of in terms that every group can understand. So for the economists, the politicians, there is economic consequence, there is political consequence. Minister, we didn't have no internet this week in our village, I'm not voting for you next election. All of a sudden, why we didn't have internet? NTRC gets a call. Why they didn't have internet? The service providers get a call because it's now hitting human cost. Same thing for businesses. We lost X million or X $100,000 because the network was down or we didn't get what we were paying for the internet service. It has consequence. It translates into something that matters for them. They can make an appeal or advocate for change on the basis of what makes sense to them. Everybody with me? So the key thing to understand inside of this is that resilience is built, and I think we just heard that in the last presentation. It doesn't happen automatically, which means that if these underlying systems are important, if this foundation layer is critical, somebody has to have the task not just of defining it once, but ensuring that the evolution of the design continues to match the evolution of the need. This means for the technical community that when things change, we now have more people expecting more connectivity and more bandwidth needs to come into the country, more cables need to deliver more capacity. Someone has to make decisions. Those decisions have economic consequences. The economics need to ensure that somebody can invest in it, and so the thread continues to pull. At the end of the day, the cables remain under sea. You don't see them, but you feel the consequence of their age or their upgrade on the basis of who made the right investment choice. That's critical internet infrastructure, right? And that is why it has to be deliberately developed and deliberately evolved. All of these things, submarines, all of the stuff that you'll be hearing from the team have dollar figures behind them. You hear it from the network providers. Well, we can't roll out 5G or 6G because the markets are too small. We can't build IXPs because there is no content. And somebody has to say, well, can we ever get content, or can we ever get larger markets if we don't have what other jurisdictions have to grow theirs? Now, that's not a technical discussion. That's an economic discussion. But without that discussion, you're not going to get your technical upgrade. And so for the Internet Governance Forum and for the persons in this room, the issue is not whether you know what's a bit or a byte or what size router is required for what kind of IXP. Is that you know that that solid foundation is absolutely critical, essential, imperative to building the kind of economic houses that we want for our communities. You all understanding critical internet infrastructure, right? So let's move last slide. So from a Caribbean context, yes, we small, or as we heard just now, we little, but we talawa. Our needs, the needs of our societies, our entrepreneurs, our businesses, our schools, our children are no different than the needs of anyone else, anywhere else. And so a certain amount of investment has to go into how we conceive this digital, invisible underlayer space that defines all of our economic and social aspirations. So the reality is the island geography, who have hilly territory or terrain, and so on and so forth, the commercial interests, what they're prepared to invest in or not, and then the political and social imperative of ensuring that things are the way they ought to be. And that's what I want us to listen to inside of this session. We have realities, but we have aspirations. We have constraints, but we have conditions that we want to see coming into our communities that require the right people to make the right choices, even when those choices shape invisible realities like what kind of servers and which kinds of networks and what kind of submarine cables are run. And that's what this session is designed to do. So I'll close with this. And this is a question that carries us through the remainder of the CIGF. What must continue working for the internet to continue serving society? For those of you who can answer that question technically, answer it technically. For those of you who can answer it from a policy standpoint, answer it from a policy standpoint. For those of you who could answer it by building better, more resilient businesses that leverage the technology in a certain way, do that. For those of you who are responsible for setting up the structures like the CSIRT and so on that keep people safe and ensure that the right amount of national awareness and literacy exists, do that. But each of us must have an answer to this question, because each of us has a responsibility to ensure that this hidden critical internet infrastructure layer exists and we can build reliably upon it. With that, I want to invite, who's going first? Albert? Or, yeah, let me let Albert go first on top of this, and then we'll take some questions and call this session a close. Albert, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. I really because we use these terms all the time, internet resilience. We should have a broader internet resiliency strategy, but what does that really mean for us? I mean, how does that impact, our business activity where we are trying to conduct a transaction and all we're seeing is this, hourglass going round and round and round, the transaction is not going through, or when we sit to watch a CPL match, and then all of a sudden, the network goes down. So Caribbean stakeholders should really be interested in the broader parts of our internet infrastructure, particularly because of our region's geography, because of our region's dependence on international connectivity and exposure to natural disasters, and because the different countries in our region are at different levels of maturity when it comes to technology. So there are many reasons why the Caribbean stakeholders should be interested, but I think our role is in each instance, greater resilience, disaster preparedness, improved DNS performance, greater resistance to certain cyber attacks. In each case, I think we have the job to try and connect that to our day-to-day lives, socially, in business, and economically. So I just wanted to make those few comments before getting into the actual details. I don't know, maybe Carlos would like to make a few general comments as well. Back to you, Bevil.
Dr. Albert. Carlos?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't able to find the unmute button, sorry. So, yes, I would like to take a couple of things you said earlier, Bevil, about how the internet is global but intensely local and how resilience is built. I think those are two very significant points that everybody should keep in mind. The connection between the different technologies that I hope I will to mention later, like things like IPv6 deployment, things like signing your routes using RPKI or deploying a root server copy, those are elements that are, I would say, key pieces of this resilience to be built. The Caribbean region has, and I've commented this with many people over the years, I think has very unique engineering challenges, and you guys have been able to rise to the challenge once, many times over. I remember a while ago in an event in Trinidad and Tobago, some people describing how they were able to connect Trinidad and Tobago using a radio link over 7 kilometers of salt water. This is an amazing, actually, engineering challenge. That's very hard to do, and I think the Caribbean as a region can draw on that engineering expertise to, I would say, bring the internet to the next level. Back to you, Bevil.
I'll mute it from here, okay? All right. Yeah, so I want to open the floor now. This is where we get interactive, and invite some comments and questions from you in terms of this issue of critical internet infrastructure. Remember we said at the top, it's a hidden foundation and it has public consequence. From an internet governance standpoint, one of the very interesting things about how we treat with this subject is there are some very real and pressing technical issues that have to be overcome in the region concerning this hidden layer. The deployment of IPv6, which is the internet protocol for the new network, continues to, in many countries, lag. And then they have the proliferation of internet exchange points, again, critical to the economic development at a local level. Now, Grenada has a wonderful benefit of having one of the best, not in the Caribbean, I think somebody said Caribbean, not Caribbean, per capita in the world, technically, in terms of the services being delivered on it and its participation philosophy with the larger society. It is a model. It is a global model for internet exchange points. But that model is still not widely understood across the wider Caribbean. And so there are real issues to be grappled with inside of the infrastructure component. I see Brent is here and he's looking at me with a questioning face. Just some perspectives, Brent, to add to this discussion on critical internet infrastructure, if you will, please. I know you have a presentation later, but just to add into the general discussion for persons to understand the connection between the hidden aspect of V6 deployment and IXP deployment and rollout of which you are part regionally, and the larger issues of policy and political support and economic investment. This is Brent McIntosh, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wooden, and good morning all. So just to give a little bit of thoughts on internet exchange points and its importance before I actually do my presentation, I just wanted to share that traditionally, traffic between end users from different provider networks always had to go to the US. Now, the basic relevance and importance of internet exchanges is having your traffic exchange locally. Now, that has been the core reason. But what we have noticed today, looking at internet trends, there is specific content that the different sectors, for example, the private sector, financial sectors, end users, governments, there's specific content that they want to access. Now, what is the benefit of them accessing that content locally as opposed to globally, right? It's all because of sovereignty, and it's something I'm surprised Bevil didn't touch on us yet, but that's one of the critical importance of having internet exchange points. So that's just a comment from me. Today, businesses, public sector governments rely on such critical infrastructure for making their workloads, their day-to-day operations very efficient because of not just where it's being accessed from, but how secure it is and how it's making their businesses more operationally efficient. So just to enforce what Mr. Wooding is saying, there is a high dependency on such infrastructure that also creates opportunities for building what we call next generation or bleeding edge services. For example, I'm going to give a couple examples of maybe a local bank, of what the Grenada Core Bank is doing, what government is doing, what the private sector now wants to do on such critical infrastructure. And on top of that, there are going to be 3 focus areas. The areas of not just accessing content locally, but also using your local CCTLD or .gd, CCTLD, country code top level domain, why that's important, and also how does the housing of these infrastructures using data centers are critical in the Caribbean region.
Thanks, Brent. And there's a reason I didn't mention sovereignty yet, because I think it's an important part of the discussion that we have to have this week. There's a lot of talk about digital sovereignty and data sovereignty and so on, but then there's also a conversation, a quieter one, about the fallacy of sovereignty when so much of what we rely on is not under our control. And that's an internet governance conversation to be had. And when you start digging into the operations of the internet, and if we can get the slides back up, I just want to put something up. You can actually critically measure the extent to which there is an understanding of the criticalness of infrastructure in the region on the basis of who invests in what. Right? Because there's a way to tell if we actually have consensus that these are critical issues. And you see it in investments, in infrastructure, in the hidden component. How well is the foundation laid, and where does the foundation rest? How much of the foundation rests in the local economy, for example, is a wonderful indicator of a territorial jurisdiction that understands that this is critical. Here's another fun fact. For all of the economies realizing the benefits of the digital era, there is a common or very consistent thread to them all. They have a substantial amount of local critical internet infrastructure. Now think about that. Remember we spoke about the economic connection or thread. If you want to realize the full economic benefit of the internet in your local society, you have to invest in local critical internet infrastructure. Now, I'll leave that at there for now, because it then gets into who has to invest what. What does the government have to invest? What does the private sector have to invest? What does the education sector have to invest? It's not a flat or linear conversation. It is actually a very nuanced conversation, but precisely the kinds of things that we want to have inside of this forum. Who's going to be next? Just question or comment or thought something that you want answered? Yes. Caller from the East. Go ahead, caller. Tabletop mic number.
All right, good morning, everybody. Since we're on the topic of criticality and critical infrastructure, we use terms as dependency, and things being critical in terms of we're talking subsea cables and so on, right? Now, when we say critical, are we doing the right assessments to know how critical it is? One, and two, are we doing the proper scenario plannings around the critical infrastructure if we have the loss, and as well as resilience and redundancy around those within our infrastructure?
So that's the point I was just getting at. So we have defined something called critical internet infrastructure on the basis of a global sample size, the global internet, and its impact in global economies, where we can measure the effectiveness of, slides please, of these three layers that are going to come up on screen: the physical layer, the logical layer, and the operational layer. And so on an international stage, we know it is critical. The point I was just raising is that for you to determine criticality at a local level, you have to have the measures that give indication to that at each layer in a local context. And so the question then becomes, who measures what? Right? And that is where discussions like these go from this room into decisions that have to be made at the policy level, at the political level, at the regulatory level. Nigel? And he might be begging for time.
Yeah, I used this one this morning, so this one seems to be working. Just to add on to what you were saying there, the physical, logical, operational at the local level. So for instance, at the physical level, if we're looking at international connectivity, the submarine cables that are coming in, all right, how many do you have? Do you have more than one submarine cable coming into the island? And you also pointed out single points of failure, right? Or single points of control might also be another thing to consider. So how many submarine cables do you have coming into the island? Do they all come into the same place? Are they all owned by the same person? Right? All of these things are potential vulnerabilities that you can take into account, and you can seek to diversify. At the logical layer now, you're bringing in people like ICANN and LACNIC and so on. ICANN has talked about the DNS system. For you to connect to anywhere, any address on the internet, basically we're using domain names. If that domain name system is not working, then you're basically out of service. So where do you get your domain name service from? Is it on the island, or is it from somewhere off island that you need a diverse, reliable connection to, right? And these are the kinds of things that we could hear probably a little comment from ICANN about, and even the IP numbering, access to those numbers. How do we make those as resilient as possible or as affordable as possible for small operators in the Caribbean? I remember having been involved in discussions early on with ARIN about providing numbers to our small markets in a more digestible quantity, right? So all these are considerations at the various levels that would have to be taken into account. Thanks.
Albert, do you want to add or respond in any way to that?
Yes, absolutely. I think Nigel is absolutely correct. Elements some of these that allow the internet to work are very critical, but because we don't always understand them, we don't know how critical they are. For example, I wanted to just mention the whole topic of root servers. Every single time we send an email or go to a website, or our app on our phone goes to a website, it accesses the DNS, the domain name system, to find out what is the IP address for the web address that we are putting in, onegrenada.com. So that question has to be asked. Where can I find the computer that'll give me the website for your bank or for your business, whatever it is? And that query has to go to a computer, to a system known as a root server system. And then that system will come back and say, well, I don't know where onegrenada.com is, but I know where .com is. And if you go look there, then they will be able to direct you to onegrenada.com. And this happens so quickly and it happens in the background that we do not realize that should that system go down, should resolution be interrupted for whatever reasons, then essentially we have no internet. The computers would be there, but we would not be able to reach them. So coming back home to the Caribbean and local context, we need to ensure that we have root servers deployed across our Caribbean in different territories, so that if one particular channel goes down, one particular country goes down, one particular root server goes down, then we would have the option to have our resolution done going through another route. So very simply, we are advocating that we have more root servers deployed in our region to, from a strategic perspective, have broader internet resilience. And this is another one of those hidden aspects of internet infrastructure that is critical. And it's only critical to us when we realize that the internet has gone down and we discover that it's gone down because there's a connectivity to root server issue. I just wanted to drop in that one example.
Thanks, Albert.
Good afternoon.
Yep, afternoon.
I'm just understanding the topic.
Yep, afternoon.
I'm just understanding the topic from the information that is presented here. And my question is regarding the infrastructure. Now, in terms of economics, we know that, yes, in terms of funding, the governments of the Caribbean, since we're a small island developing state, typically receive funding from international countries and communities. And I think that is also a risk. But in terms of the economics of the infrastructure, how much control do we really have? Even if we set up the infrastructure locally and we're speaking about sovereignty, how much control do we technically maintain within the Caribbean?
It's an interesting question. It's how much control would we really have if we had equipment or infrastructure within the Caribbean, correct? Or at a national level. So it's kind of regulatory style question. You want to give Brett? And I'll trade my 2 cents after.
We'll address that in the next presentation. I'll talk a little bit about it as well.
All right. So you'll get a deeper response. I want to, it's an important question for us to flag though. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier about the fallacy of sovereignty when you consider the actors. Can we get the slides back on screen? I want to put another image on for you to give further amplification to this notion that Nigel raised earlier this morning, that no one is in control. Part of the fascinating, magical thing about the internet is this diagram, this spaghetti string network of players and actors, each with their own part to play, but all of whom together give us what we call the internet. And every one of those nodes makes their own decisions based on their own structure, whether for-profit, not-for-profit, public good, right? But together, it gives us this thing called the internet. So the question is multi-layered and very complex in answering it. If you ask, Albert, for example, just said, we need to have something that some of you in the room mightn't understand, DNSSEC, or Carlos might say IPv6, and any one of these persons, depending on the technical angle that they're coming from, will tell you something that is absolutely essential to a resilient, stable, and secure internet. And they would be correct in asking or advocating for its availability and presence at the local level. But it's so much, right? And so it comes down to each player in their node doing their part to ensure that the thing that is important to them happens. I represent the American Registry for Internet Numbers, like Carlos, who represents LACNIC, the Latin America and the Caribbean RI, our Regional Internet Registry. Our core mission, Internet Numbers. We give out the IP addresses and the autonomous system numbers that speak to a dimension of resilience. You ask us on a good day, we'll tell you, you must have IPv6. And you must get your own autonomous system number so you can participate in your local IXP. Are we lying? Are we marketing? No, we're not. It's essential to an effective and resilient local internet. But it is not sufficient. And that's the thing I want us to register. Like, each of these things are important. And each of us will intersect with something in this mesh at the point that matters to us or our organization or our interests. The key to keeping it all in balance as an ecosystem is each part doing its part. And that's how we manage the complexity. If each part does its part, the complexity is managed. Outside of that, what does it look like? Chaos, correct? But it's governed or managed chaos because each part is invested in doing its part. And I hope that makes sense without knowing the technical underpinnings and the language of the technical community, that we can see that going on. Question or wrap? Okay. One more question from online? Okay, and then we wrap.
Yes, we have Shannon Osepa online.
Yes, Shannon Osepa.
Yes, hello
Yes.
to everyone. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Yes, talking about critical infrastructure, I think it's also very important if we can focus on the, what I would call electric grid, or let's say electricity. I have been experiencing in one country, I'm not going to mention the name of the country right now, but for the last 2 weeks, I mean, a very unreliable, let's say, electric power. So, and that's island-wide. So a lot of people, they don't have electricity. So when we talk about critical infrastructure, given that we are attending this Internet Governance Forum, of course, the focus is more on internet, but if you don't have electric power, then you have a problem as well. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that as well. So how are we dealing in a more holistic way, not only on internet matters, but also how are we going to deal with electric power that sometimes are not what it is supposed to be? So that would be my question and contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. And I'll have to defer the answer to later in the session because, again, it's another part of the hidden infrastructure. All of this digital economy still runs on some very old school technology, electricity being one of them, right? No power, no computer. No computer, no internet. No internet, life, right? So what Shannon is getting at is a big part of the growing global internet governance discussion is an involvement of the power layer or power provider component, without which we wouldn't have the rest of the stack enabled. That's it for time in terms of this session, but I hope it was a useful introduction to this term that you will hear very often in the space, critical internet infrastructure. What is it? Why does it matter? And I really hope on the why does it matter part, you can navigate your way to how your voice, your perspectives, your interests can feed into the
Thank you very much, Mr. Bevil Wooden. Also, Mr. Carlos Martinez and Mr. Albert Daniels. All right, so we continue with the session at this time. It's time to talk about IXPs, data centers and local content. Case study IXP, data center and .gd domain management and common services. To do this, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome forward Mr. Brent McIntosh.
Pleasant good afternoon to all. I have 20 minutes to talk about 15 wonderful years of history and then some. But just want to say the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, I know traditionally everyone thought we're only there to talk about, disputes with ISPs and pricing of services too high. I don't have good internet services in my area, but today that has changed. Among that, we have the responsibility of ensuring that Grenada has the capability for digital advancement and access to cutting-edge and bleeding-edge technology. And of course, there are three major components that I want to talk about today, and it's going to be IXPs, as you heard, Internet Exchange Points, what we're doing with our local data center, and also our CCTLD. If you're listening this morning, SG Rodney Taylor mentioned, ask actually what is CCTLD? It's your country code top level domain. And for Grenada, what is it? .gd. Trinidad? Barbados? Correct. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Is it possible I can have my slides up? If not, okay, great. And I'm not a great user of consumer electronics, believe it or not. Because we're involved in technology, everybody thinks you know everything about tech, and that's not the case for me. And let me give you a little backdrop into this. Usually I would go to a school or two, and I would speak to primary school students, secondary school students, and I will always ask them, what do they like about the internet? And yeah, it's a social media thing. They love their apps. And I'm not good with applications, social media applications and things like that. So I posed to them a question that I know a lot about. When you chat with someone from Grenada or someone in New York from Grenada, how does that data get there? They have absolutely no idea how it gets there. But they can tell you everything about the app and fans only, and I don't know about that, right? I just love the infrastructure aspect of it. Now, you realize today that, and Mr. Wooding spoke about, your role in helping develop resiliency and building the internet. You do have a role. And if you sit there on the internet every day, just browsing, going to your favorite sites, using your favorite apps, you do not know, but you're actually helping us in Grenada. At the end, TRC determine our next steps for building out our internet infrastructure. Okay, so let me just jump ahead. So I'm going to speak about, the Internet Exchange. I'm going to speak a little bit about our data center and .gd, our CCTLD. Now, traditionally, as I mentioned a while ago, internet traffic in the past would always leave our shores to go to a couple main points. Miami is one. Miami, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, and New York. Right? Because internet providers or ISPs, internet service providers, have their own independent connections to the internet at these US locations. Now, think about distance and time. A packet for my WhatsApp has to go to, the US from Miami, go to New York, to come back down to another ISP to get into Grenada. That's not good. That's not operationally efficient for a data packet. Right? While it works well and you may not even notice, but some applications do not have the tolerance for that. So this whole thing of IXPs were born, right? The ability to exchange your internet traffic that it would not leave your shores. It would be transferred between local providers. That just doesn't happen like that. It's a very socially, on the social engineering side, complex process because you have to get people to agree we want this to do. We want to do this, sorry. So to give a little history, this whole process started in 2009, I believe. Next slide, I can change it for myself. In 2009, where, of course, you can't talk about internet and you don't hear the name Mr. Bevil Wooding, right? The discussion started. Bevil Wooding would have been at PCH at that time as well. Packet Clearinghouse, which is a major critical entity for helping pushing internet growth throughout the world. And we had this discussion, Grenada needs an IXP. At that time, I was actually working for an ISP, who are usually the biggest opponents to internet exchanges. But I listened to, the discussions between the critical stakeholders then, being ISPs as well and the regulator, and we were making excellent progress. So in 2010, 2011, we had backing from the government, we had backing from all the other regional entities, and we decided, yes, Grenada is going to get an IXP. But it had to get done, right? So we worked on signing the agreement in 2011, built out the infrastructure, and at that time, it was just a little switch. So let me explain to you what an IXP is from a physical perspective. In the simplest terms, it's a network device called a layer 2 switch or a network switch, where the different providers or ISPs would take their fiber optic connection and connect to that switch. So now you have a common connectivity point. All the providers, and listen, I'm only saying providers, right? They connect to each other physically. After they connect, they have to do something else. Connecting is one thing. They have to pair with each other. Pair as in P-E-E-R, right? And when they pair, what they really do is exchange their routing information between each other. For example, now if I have traffic from, and I'm going to call some names, from CWC, Liberty Flow, that needs to get to Digicel, their routers or the devices that route their traffic would know I would use the IXP path because it's the shortest path to get to them. Now, so local traffic or traffic region providers can get to each other, so that's great. So that was done, and we started in 2011, 2012, and our traffic at that time was 5 megabits per second. Right? And we were all, we had more people at the exchange working than we had traffic passing, right? And I show Mr. Wooding still has the pictures when we were looking much younger than this of getting these providers to connect with each other. Okay? So, the Grenada Internet Exchange, or GREX, as we know it, was born, right? And we had telecom operators, at that time only. We only had, that time it was just Flow and CWC, right? Now today it's, if I have on my NTRC hat, there's still two entities, but they still pair with each other and they're still connected. But today that has transformed. It's not just ISPs we have anymore, and that is the true nature of what an internet exchange is. Anyone that has the correct resources, as mentioned, an ASN, an autonomous system number, and your own IP address space, then you can be a member of the ISP. So today we have the financial sector, we have local content providers, and we have DNS infrastructure, as Mr. Albert Daniels would have mentioned. Whenever you query a website to get to the internet, the first thing you do, so you go on your laptop and you type www.ctu.int, the first thing that happens is a lookup to what we call a domain name root server. And today in Grenada, we have 2 instances of the D-root and E-root servers. There are 13 levels. I know Albert didn't want to get into it, but there are 13 levels, and we have an E-root and a D-root. So whenever you make a query to any website, it goes straight to the data center where the internet exchange is, and that query would be responded to. Global CDNs. As part of our pairing infrastructure, we also have the hyperscalers. Yep, we have Akamai, where 30%, and as a matter of fact, Akamai has confirmed that 30% of the internet traffic goes through Akamai. So we have Akamai. We also have another hyperscaler, Cloudflare, very, very important for, I see Javid smiling, for the banks and the financial sector. We have Meta, and we have, that was a recent one, CDN 77, for the folks who love playing Roblox and video games, right? It's usually not our priority, but we ensure that we covered everyone. And also we have another one we cannot mention due to the, the agreement. But if you think about the word grape and grape breastfed, you might figure it out. Great. So what is that critical infrastructure? So that critical infrastructure, as I mentioned before, in 2011 was just a switch. Today, it's a plethora of switches, all connected together in a single fabric at what we call multi-100 gigabit backbone. It's very large. That means we can cross gigs and gigs of traffic across that backbone seamlessly and locally. Now, I'm just going to jump a little bit to what our traffic exchange looks like in terms of a value. When everything is working properly and at peak traffic times in Grenada, 25% of your internet traffic is served from the data center in Grenada. That's amazing, and I'll tell you why. Because if we had a loss on our subsea systems, for example, the subsea fibers, God forbid, gets damaged, both of them at the same time, which we've seen happen before, that means some of the critical business traffic will still be served at the data center. Now, the NTRC has made it one of its critical priorities in its strategic plan to ensure this type of infrastructure is managed based on world-class standards and also, I want it accessible for the entire Grenada stakeholder set, or all the entities. As I mentioned before, we have financial sector in there, we have government. Government is one of the biggest users in terms of local traffic, between providers. We have global CDNs, which are all getting this traffic to 25 gigabits per second, right, at peak traffic times. Now here's just a simple snapshot of our traffic, right? So you would have seen at peak traffic times, it was about 25 gigs, almost 26 gigs, and you would see it flatten out. Now one would ask, and I know the tech minds in the room are saying, well, why did the traffic drop off? And yeah, there's a reason for that. We're pending a major upgrade for one of the hyperscalers there, which is Cloudflare, and that equipment has only gotten to Grenada during the week of Carnival. And nothing happening around there. So we're waiting to get that stuff cleared so we can complete the upgrade. Now, remember I told you that if you sit and you're on your phone and you're using applications and you're on websites and you're thinking you're not contributing to the development of the internet, that's not true. You are, but you just don't know it. What are you doing? Everybody takes internet traffic statistics of usage in their country, whether it's the ISPs, the IXPs, or any third-party person who really wants to track your internet usage. Now, tracking in the sense of we're not monitoring what you're doing, we're just looking at what type of content is popular. And that's how we determine what makes sense to be housed at the internet exchange. Because today, it's not just about exchanging traffic locally, but it's also providing content, providing the capability for people who are doing local content to develop their local content, to be hosted at IXP, so all these can be served locally. So let me tell you about your usage. I took a look at it for the month of June. There are two websites that are always #1 and #2 for Grenada. Pretty much in the curve, and it doesn't change. Anyone want to take a guess and tell me what's the first website that's always #1 for most visited in Grenada? Facebook and Instagram is there, but they're in the top 10, but not #1. Google, somebody said it. Google. I wish I had a few dollars in my pocket, I could give you some of it. So Google, right? What's #2? YouTube, very good. Now, #3 has gone down to position #11 for the month of June. Anyone want to take a guess and tell me what #3 is? ChatGPT. So, very correct. ChatGPT is now #3. That's for the month of June. It may change, in future months. In past months, it may have been something else. But WhatsApp used to be #3, all right? Usually. Now ChatGPT has replaced that. That just goes to show the importance of AI in daily usage, right? So we look at that content and we say, well, this is popular. Netflix is in the top 5. So maybe we need to host content that you would enjoy, all right? Or maybe we need to host content that's important to businesses. For example, Cloudflare's content, very, very critical. And I'm going to give one example, which is our largest local bank, Grenada Core Bank. They have taken the advantage of ensuring they get their own autonomous system, their own IP addresses, and decided to connect on the IXP. What does this mean for the banking system? The banking front end is going to be accessible from Grenada. Their security and their DNS services are also hosted with Cloudflare. So that means their response in their web apps and their web front end is going to be faster than normal because they want their banking to be more efficient for you as an end user and also protected. Great. So that's one of the examples. There is something else that we do there, and this is what the actual the IXP house, which is called the data center. That's what it looks like. It's a modular data center. It's hosted in Manjulu. All right, so the IXP sits within that. So the switching fabric that I spoke about actually sits in that location, but the NTRC understands the importance of resilience. So what we did as well is to ensure that we still maintained our miniature IXP room at the NTRC location at Dusty Highway. So in other words, we have two locations. We have redundant locations with similar switching capacity. Now, let's talk a little bit about government, right? Now, you know, of course, we have tons of state-owned enterprises, statutory bodies. They understood that if they can utilize this, it will help them with what they call their BCP or their business continuity plan. They're also now hosting their content redundantly at the data center, and that's really, really crucial. Okay, let me just speak a little bit about local services. Again, government's private cloud is hosted at the data center. Why is data centers important? Because data centers have particular tiers. Tiers 1 up to tier 4. Tier 4 being the highest tier, meaning that that data center would never go down, or the chance of it going down may be very, very small. And these things are measured in uptime, availability. 5 nines, 99.999% of the time, which means only 5 minutes a year that our data center may be down. We do not have a rating for ours as yet, but we're working on it. Obviously, building out these solutions for the local community is going to help us drive this. Now, Mr. DaBreo, Mr. Wooding, and the rest of the team would have spoken about security. It's not just saying that you're secure anymore. It's also proving that you're secure and certified. Now, these hyperscalers I mentioned, Akamai, Cloudflare, every 6 months, they send us an email asking, and I tell you, the NTRC has a lot of responsibilities. Huh? They ask, can you give us an update on your ISO 27001 certification? Can you tell? That means at some point, if we cannot prove that we're a certified data center or a certified colo, we may not be able to hold these global service or cache engines anymore. So it's a lot of pressure on us because this comes at a financial cost and also a cost of resources, which ultimately is financial, that we have to ensure that we can provide to maintain these. And this is where the multi-stakeholderism and these relationships come in. So the NTRC, other government bodies, we have to work together. Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Digital Transformation, we have to work together to ensure we can prove that we are at a certain tier level where we can support these. So we're proud of our Internet Exchange, our national data center, and the ability to give every stakeholder group in Grenada the opportunity to exchange their traffic locally, the opportunity to pull critical content to the end users, the ability to host their services, and the ability to think of new creative ideas that can be deployed within this infrastructure. So to sort of answer your question about control, and I didn't forget you, as Mr. Wooden mentioned, it's very, very, very complex. The ability of having your own internet resources, IP addresses, DNS servers, autonomous system numbers, data center, private cloud hosted locally, means you can have a certain level of control. But could you wean yourself off the dependency of the entire internet ecosystem? Not really. There's only so much content we can host. There are some websites that you may need to get to. For example, you may need to get access to some website in China that we can't serve you locally. Your traffic has to go to the US, New York, then China. We can't help that, all right? So the things that you can control, you can actually deploy them, but there's no way you can have total dependency from some of these services. The CCTLD is always another complex area, .gd. .gd is, of course, as I mentioned before, our country code top-level domain. And for us at the NTRC, we see it as one of the ways of showing our digital identity for our sovereign policy discussions. We want to ensure that all our businesses, and we have some form of local identity, right? So one way to demonstrate to the Grenada's public that we mean business is to ensure that government websites, government services are tied to this CCTLD. And we have started gov.gd, tax.gov.gd, all right? But you might see something saying some government office, .com, or you may see an email from government manager at hotmail.com or something like that. Our role is to work with all the other ministries to ensure that this is transferred to our CCTLD. And this has started. We're seeing a lot of the governing boards for the state-owned enterprises are already starting to move from the generic, Hotmail and Yahoo into .gd, and we're helping facilitate that at the NTRC. So this is really, really huge for us. Of course, you see we have over 4,000 registered domains. Not all are local, obviously. We're trying to ensure that we create the avenue to get people to move to .gd. Even my personal business, I'm a .net. I'm looking to move to .gd as well because I believe we should have local identity. And at the NTRC, the team there is very, very passionate about it. As a matter of fact, Mr. Vincent Roberts was just saying we need to find a way to actually market .gd. Not that it's not doing well, but it can do better, right? So our plan is to improve that, okay? Now, I wish Albert was here in person because we could have had that DNS security discussion. So you heard of DNS and DNS sec? Well, securing DNS is very, very important because, you have to mitigate impersonations. When I speak to different companies and I ask them about the type of attacks they receive, I think for most of them, ransomware is a big thing, but phishing attacks, which Jervis mentioned, is huge. Most of the attacks they get these days are phishing attacks. And for the companies who can afford it and who have to work to afford it should implement, these campaigns where you test your staff, especially for governments, right? I've seen one case of a test where the IT manager actually failed the test, all right? So we have to ensure our staff is ready. And that's one of the things with DNSSEC. You can sort of mitigate these type of attacks by securing your DNS with DNSSEC. Hopefully we have time for a technical discussion maybe in another session, but that's something, we feel passionate about, and we hope to ensure this is rolled out nationally for Grenada. It's not that it's a simple process, it is complex, but it's something that can be done in the short term. Now, I wouldn't go through too much detail on, the entire .dg, history, but it had some history, right? Because how DNS works, you have to have three main things, right? You have, of course, IANA, which they mentioned. Then you have your registry. You have your registrar who can resell those domain locally, and then you have you, the end user, or registrants, right? But we've been through some hurdles, getting proper administrative and technical management for our CCTLD. The NTRC, again, is very, very passionate about ensuring this is done in a manner that is seamlessly managed. I see people in the room, Mr. Christian Trufuk is here, who has been one of the pioneers with us trying to bring this home for full management. We're not 100% there as yet, but at some point, we hope that under the guidance and governance of NTRC, we can fully manage our own CCTLD as some of the other countries do. For example, Trinidad, Suriname, Puerto Rico. So I'm just gonna close with that. I love to leave, a little bit of room for at least one question. I'm not sure I'm doing with time. And as I mentioned before, I had only 20 minutes to talk about 15 years of history. And for those who know me very well, I can stay here whole day and speak about tech, but I don't want to do that today. So let me give you a chance to ask one question. And please, as Jervis said, make it an easy question. He's going to ask me a hard question. I know him so well. Okay, go ahead.
The mic is on the tables. If you have to ask your questions, just press. The light is on.
All right, so you spoke about getting greater adoption, but you did not say what the cost is like to the companies
local companies who are not using .gd, because we still have several using .com. Is there a cost implication to them?
Wow, that's an excellent question. We have one of the registrars here, Mr. Shufuk. I don't want to put you under any pressure, but yes, there is a cost. So traditionally, when you look at the comparison of, procuring a .gd domain name, for example, company.gd as opposed to company.com, company.com has always been cheaper, right? Company.com would have been, cheaper to host and deploy in a US, public cloud, right? So the cost difference, I can't really give you, like a factor, but .gd is more expensive in a sense. And then don't look at that as a bad thing, right? Because you're paying for something that gives you local online independence and identity, right? And that's one of the value it brings, all right? So, and if you look at a lot of countries these days, right, they actually try to encourage strongly that you use their CCTLDs, right? So it's very, very important that we actually not look at the cost, but look at the long-term benefit, all right? Every country has to move towards its digital independence, digital sovereignty, so you want to ensure you have the ability to do that with the infrastructure that we're building and continue to build. Question? We can take one more.
You hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. You just said that .gd is more expensive. So thinking about it economically, what we're looking at for our consumers is affordability. So how does that help the consumers if the .gd is more expensive? Because the cost, I think, will trail down to the consumers.
Yeah, so if I look at it from a company perspective, you want to acquire a .gd domain for your company? Yes, and I say more expensive, but don't look at it as $1,000 difference, right? A .com maybe $14.95 US a year, .gd maybe $20 US a year, all right? Like I said, we have one of the registrars here, Mr. Chu, and also in TRC, so we can maybe give you a costing on it, right? But think about the non-tangible benefit of having your digital identity and also having the ability to be hosted in our data center seamlessly, maybe even at a lower cost, right? Especially if you run a business that needs disaster recovery. One of the things I didn't mention as well, when you go on the internet, you need a DNS server, right? Everybody knows 8.8.8.8, Google's DNS. Well, we have built our own. It's hosted at the data center. It's called ns1.spice.gd, all right? Now, using the .gd domain locally with our local infrastructure means all your DNS requests would stay local, right? DNS is what drives the internet. Keep in mind, the internet is based on numbers. It's based on numbers called IP addresses. But we as human beings don't like math. We don't like numbers. We like names. So that's why DNS was created. It's like the directory of the internet. So it's easier to remember names. So the ability for us to ensure that you have local access to your DNS is better. A lot of statistics on the internet is pulled, and analytics is pulled using those same DNS. That's how I know you guys love to go on ChatGPT, right? It's all based on your DNS request, right? So from a data sovereignty perspective, it would make sense moving that route, okay? And resilience, very, very good.
Yeah,
right?
Brent, it's not so much a question, but I think in answering the question as well, I think from a security standpoint, for us at the National CSIRT, having your local domain, it helps as well because it makes it easier to identify what an impersonation might be, might look like when it comes to bad actors, trying to pass themselves off as you. .com is a little harder because, but if it's .gd, I think we have a bit more control as well. So when you look at reputational damage and so to your company, it's a small investment to just, have the local .gd domain.
That's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought it up because I know we had a few instances of cases where, very, very bad sites that we had to deal with on the .gg domain. So that's very good. We pull more statistics. We have the ability to work with our admin team at Key Registry, call them and say, hey, look, we have a site that has been impersonating this site. I remember when I think it was the central bank actually had someone selling the e-dollar, and they had to, go around hoops to get that fixed. Now, so just in closing, just to talk a little bit about, the benefits of what's happening. Progress really brings more progress. Now that we have been able to marry the data center with the internet exchange, yes, they're married now because they're in the same place working together. You know what the next step after marriage is, usually? Divorce? No. Children, correct. Oh, children, right. And the offspring is, as Jervis mentioned, is going to be a knock and a sock. The government network is going to get to a level where it has to be managed operationally from a network perspective and operationally from a security perspective. And I'm hoping that the grandchild is going to be a next data center that's going to be AI-based, because there's nothing we can do to stop AI in a sense. We can manage it to a sense as well, but workloads are now becoming more AI-driven, and now all our network equipment has intent-based networking with AI, network equipment looking at user trends and making decisions for you of how traffic should be routed. I would be out of a job in a few years, right? That's just the way. So we have to embrace those changes, but manage it from a sort of safe and secure perspective. So if that's it for questions, I would like to thank you very much for listening to me, especially before lunch.
Mr. Brent McIntosh, thanks very much. So you did mention that, and just audience, you can bear me out here, WhatsApp used to rank 3rd, and it's now down the ladder?
Yes, and that's monthly statistics. So every month you look at it, it could change.
Okay, so it's very fluid.
It's very, very fluid,
okay,
correct.
But I want you to know, as a huge WhatsApp fan, I'm very troubled by that. Thank you. I eat, bathe, and sleep WhatsApp. I'm very troubled by that. Thank you, sir. Right, so we are going to move on now, and we're going to focus on what's called the human layer. Research capacity building, and the technical community is a very important component of this ecosystem. So, to tell us all about this, I invite Dr. Claire Craig, who's joining us virtually. Focus your attention on screen.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claire Craig. I hope that you're hearing me okay. I'm sorry that I'm not there with you in lovely Grenada, but like Albert, we do what we have to do virtually, and happy that the technology works for us. As the MC said, I'm going to be talking to you about the human layer. Let me share my slides. I hope you are seeing my first slide. So I changed the title somewhat. I'm not hearing anything, any feedback. So if anyone wants to tell me if they're hearing me, I'd be happy.
We are seeing you, and at least we are seeing the slides and we're hearing.
Okay, great. All right. So my presentation is beyond connectivity. Let me just turn my camera off just a little bit. Right. Beyond connectivity, building the Caribbean Internet human layer, research capacity building, capacity building and the technical community. And I'm representing Caribnog for this presentation. And I'm happy to be here at the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. So I heard some of the previous conversations about the technical infrastructure, and I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think makes the internet work? Many of us are aware of the technical infrastructure. Some of them we see, some we don't, but we are aware that they exist. Things like the submarine cables, data centers, Brent just spoke to you about internet exchange points, the networks, DNS, domain name system, which I'm sure Albert Daniels would have spoken to you about, as well as cloud infrastructure. But behind all of that, what else makes the internet work? It's the people behind the internet, the network engineers, researchers, operators, policymakers, and I'm sure there are quite a few in the room today, students, as well as community leaders. So when we talk about the internet's physical and technical infrastructure, we have to recognize that the human layer determines whether the infrastructure can be built, operated, secured, and sustained. So we may ask ourselves, why does this matter to us in the region? When you look at the Caribbean, we are small, geographically dispersed markets. We have fairly limited pools of specialized technical expertise, particularly in any one country. As a region, we may have quite a few, but again, we will get to that in a later slide. There is a dependence on our international connectivity, as Brent was speaking just now about traffic exchanging and the importance of using the .gd, the CCTLD, instead of a .com and those kinds of issues. Then we have uneven infrastructure and technical capacity across the region. Well, nobody has to tell you that in our region, we face issues of natural disasters. We just look back to Jamaica last year with their hurricanes, and I'm sure Grenada has experiences with that. And in some of our islands, we have flooding and different types of natural disasters. And then there is another issue that we very seldom speak about, and that's the brain drain and migration. People go away to study and they may not come back home, or they come back and the opportunities don't exist, and therefore, do they stay or do they leave? And another area that we seems to be very limited on is limited resources for research and experimentation, and particularly experimentation because from what I have read, we in the Caribbean are a little bit risk averse. So things like, experimenting are not things that come very naturally to us. And there is a need for greater regional cooperation. So the Caribbean can't simply replicate the capacity, we can't simply replicate the capacity building models of larger regions. We need approaches that recognize our geography, our scale, and our interconnectedness. And that is something that we need to see as an asset that we have, and not just look at our smallness or the challenges that we face, but how do we use these challenges to benefit our region. So we can look at it from a layered perspective in that there are four main layers. There's the knowledge layer, and we're not just talking about knowledge from a technical capability, but we're talking about, do we have enough research? Do we have enough data and evidence to make proper decisions about Caribbean internet? Do we know where our traffic is going or what infrastructure gaps exist? And what about our skills gap? And what are some of the emerging risks? Then there is the capacity. Do people have the knowledge and practical skill to operate the infrastructure? And importantly, do we have the opportunities to apply the skills? And that is where we spoke about people leaving, migration, because they may have the skills, but recognize that there aren't sufficient opportunities where they may be. So that's why it's important for us to focus as well on the community. So because no individual or any one organization has the answers. Therefore, technical knowledge increasingly moves through communities like the Caribbean Telecommunications Union and the sessions that they hold, such as the CIGF, the Caribnog and or biannual meetings that are held, and some of the other technical meetings. Then there is leadership. So leadership is critical because we need people to move from beyond operating today's infrastructure to asking, what should Caribbean infrastructure look like in 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, or even 5 years from now? So when these four things come together, they create something much more valuable than training alone. They create a sustainable regional capacity, or as we like to say, a resilient Caribbean internet. So moving on to who is this Caribbean technical community? And we're looking again at the people behind it. And we spoke about network engineers, operators, researchers, policy makers, students, community leaders. But let's say, for instance, there is I think Albert may have spoken about DNS and DNS abuse. This is a technical issue, but it's also a security issue. It's a policy issue. It's a consumer issue, and it can also be seen as a governance issue. Again, the technology behind this, we're looking at the data centers, the technical organizations, the internet service providers, government agencies, internet exchange points, and universities. So they all have a critical role to play. So for instance, again, we talk about the rollout, deployment of IPv6. But deployment is not just about technical issues. It also requires us to have an understanding of what types of investments are needed for that type of deployment, what types of skills are needed, what organizational decisions are necessary, equipment, and what policy must be in place for this to be effectively deployed. So we asked ourselves the question, how well are these communities connected to each other? Do they live in silos, or are they connected? And this is where forums such as this Caribbean Internet Governance Forum helps to bring different types of capacities, different types of different segments of the technical community together to bridge this gap. Again, we're talking about the technical community, and now we link it to give internet governance. So more and more, the technical issues, when we think about internet governance, we think more about policies. And so we tend to think that technical issues and policies are separate, but there is a strong interconnection between these. We're looking at a lot of different areas of expertise, technical expertise, cybersecurity, IPv6, digital resilience, digital sovereignty. Do we have meaningful connectivity? What about universal acceptance and internationalized domain names? How are we treating with data centers and cloud? What about our infrastructure investment? And again, we can't leave out the AI that everyone is talking about, and Brent just showed us how the traffic statistics has been shifting because of the use of AI. So we recognize that internet governance needs technical expertise, and the technical community needs to understand and participate in internet governance. So this is where we talk about the intersection between the technical and the policy. Here again, we look at individual skills as it relates and regional capacity. When we're talking about individual skills, we're not just talking about individual training. For instance, let's take that, imagine that we had, say, 10 engineers. That would be valuable. But suppose in the country, let's say Grenada, since that's where the meeting is, the organizations don't have the budget, the authority, the processes, or even the leadership on how to use these skills. Then what do you have? You find that there is a need to build capacity. Otherwise, we may lose these skilled persons. Either they may go to other places in the region, which usually they tend not to, or they may leave permanently and go to greener pastures. So from the individual, we're looking at the knowledge, the skills, and the confidence, and their experience as well. From the organization, we're looking at the ability of an organization to use and retain those skills. But from the regional, to me, this is where we need to spend time looking at how we as a region can take advantage of what exists within the region where something may not exist only in one country. So the networks, the communities, the institution that allows expertise to move across countries and organizations. And this is particularly important for us in the Caribbean. We may not have the scale to duplicate every capability in every country. Okay, I'm getting my 5 minutes notice. Thank you, I'll be short. But training of an individual is not the same as capacity building. So the regional capacity, therefore, for the regional capacity to develop, we need to have an ecosystem that allows training of individuals is not the same as building capacity. Regional capacity, therefore, requires an ecosystem that allows people to learn, contribute, and to remain engaged. And I know it's just lunch after me, so I will be as quickly as I can without speaking too fast. So we move now to communities in practice. And I wanted to give you an example of the community that I belong to, which is Caribnog. Caribnog is the leading technical community for people and institutions in our region. We bring together network operators, engineers, security specialists, policymakers, academics, and private sector leaders. We share knowledge, solve problems to advance a resilient, inclusive, and open internet for the region. We host meetings, working groups, as well as year-round collaboration through our WhatsApp chats and our mailing lists. And we enable practical learning, technical exchange, and trusted relationships, turning ideas into real impact. At Caribnog, we believe a strong internet starts with a strong community. We connect, we learn, and we build together. And this is just a quick diagram of how this can happen. We connect, we learn, we building some experimentation in there, deploy, share, and lead. And here are this is the way we can do this, just moving quickly along. Local, so we have to recognize, because of the challenges that we face, this is an opportunity for us to have local solutions to our global challenges. So we can research locally, we build continuously, create opportunity to practice, strengthen those communities, and then bring technological voices into governance. And in so doing, I just want to speak to you about the research that has been taking place at Caribnog. We have been doing we have an initiative with the Caribbean IXPs and Internet Interconnection called caribixps.com. There we have been looking at two specific challenges. One is getting together a directory of Caribbean internet exchange points. So it's the source of truth for internet exchange points in our regions, and it's also the source of truth for Caribbean internet traffic. Here we bring together researchers and operators. We identify current and emerging challenges. We identify internet infrastructure gaps, generate Caribbean-specific evidence, document Caribbean experiences, and inform public policy. We also develop local expertise, build practical skills, and create a transfer of knowledge. So specifically, we have moved from anecdotal information to scientific, disaggregated data on our regional traffic to aggregated data, and we recognize that we are more than just traffic management, but this is an initiative for a shared view of Caribbean interconnection. And so this is my final slide. What really makes the internet work? It is not just cables, not just data centers, not just routers, not just IXPs, and not just policies, but it's people who research, people who build, who operate, and who secure the internet, who govern, who teach. And since we are also, as part of this Internet Governance Forum, there is a youth forum, we have to take care of those who come next, or youth, and ensure that we build on what is currently there. So thank you very much, and I leave you by letting you know that CaribNUG's next meeting will be in October. I forgot to write the dates down, but Bevil can share them with you. And it takes place in Curacao, and we look forward to having you there, where we can share with you some of this collaboration, where you get to understand some of the things we do and the things that I'm talking about here, and the value for us interconnecting, because it's more than just about the technology. It's about people coming together, building relationships to solve our Caribbean problems. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here to speak with you today, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Claire Craig. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that all of today's presentations can be found on the CTU website. So go to ctu.int, and while you're there, click on the event banner, and you'll be in the loop with all the presentations. All right? Now it's time for lunch. What say we? All right. So lunch will be served at the main restaurants. Resort staff are positioned along the path to